Chapter 786. Break the Illusions. Chapter 786. Break the Illusions. Space Power Blockade. The whole world was suddenly silent. No wind. No sound. All the energies seemed to have simultaneously force quit. Everything stopped all of a sudden. The man that looked exactly like Shiryen had his eccentric smile frozen. More than 10 Yalin and Taimu around Shiryen halted, their face frozen in place. Shiryen extended his arm. A divine light departed from his fingertip, dashing like the lightning towards that man. Tut! His body exploded, turning into gray mist. A wisp of soul consciousness twisted, flashed from his body before it disappeared. Boom, boom, boom. His finger pointed on the youths sitting near him. They perished one by one, releasing a beam of soul remnant. Farther from him were the illusions of Taimu and Yalin. Shiryen didn't dare act rashly. Each of the illusionary bodies had the living energy fluctuations, and his purgatory token had reflected their living signals. Shiryen couldn't tell who was real and who were the replicas. As he couldn't tell which one was real, Shiryen didn't dare act recklessly as he was afraid of hurting Yalin's and Taimu's real bodies. Space power. A sharp voice arose in the forest nearby. The cunning old fellow seemed to be scared. He screamed darkly. It has been so many years since I've seen someone using space power Upanishad. You're rare, really rare. I want to see if the space power Upanishad can break my 1,000 fantasy fields domain or not. When his voice stopped, shadows started to ooze out from nowhere, floating like ghosts that couldn't be caught. They all dashed toward Shiryen. Even though the shadows hadn't come close to him yet, the area that Shiryen's space domain covered suddenly had a tremendous change. Instantly, Shiryen couldn't see Taimu and Yalin anymore. He was standing on a small, isolated island. This island had some barren mountains. Rolling waves from the ocean lapped the shore. Shiryen could even hear the sound of waves and seawater moving. The shadows had disappeared, becoming part of his surroundings that his soul consciousness couldn't sense anymore. Taimu and Yalin weren't in this illusion. They were forced to move somewhere else. Shiryen's purgatory token couldn't detect them. That old cunning man understood the purgatory token's features well. His 1,000 fantasy fields domain would counter the ability to sense living beings of the purgatory token. He wasn't going to let Shiryen have any assistance. Understanding this anomaly, Shiryen didn't hesitate to take back the wisp of soul consciousness he had sent into the purgatory token. He didn't need its help anymore. The other's domain was peculiar and wicked as it could affect God's souls and sea of consciousness. Under such circumstance, Shiryen didn't release the soul consciousness anymore. Any creatures that appeared in this place would be treated as his enemies. The surroundings changed again. Gradually, flowers bloomed on this island. Each of them was so beautiful and fresh. Stars blinked in the night. Luxuriant, green foliage appeared. The small, cold island suddenly revived vigorously and brought people. Seeing this vibrant scene, Shiryen didn't feel comfortable. He vaguely felt like an invisible danger was creeping towards him, a danger that could attack him in any minute. A feeble wisp of energy fluctuation that was hard to detect flashed in the illusion. Shortly, flowers and florists on the island flew out as if they were just given powers. Strong energy fluctuations attacked. Billions of tons of seawater condensed into different kinds of sea monsters, bearing fangs and claw, roaring crazily on their way. Shiryen's space domain couldn't stop them. Those florists and the sea monsters seemed to have a long time growing in his space power and got used to its features. When they attacked him, his space domain could not seal them. Shiryen understood that all that he saw were just hollow images, so his space power couldn't constrain them. However, the energy stored in them was real, which was the condensed energy of a king-god realm warrior. If Shiryen were careless, this kind of power could hurt him or even kill him on the spot. Seeing the danger coming, Shiryen was as calm as usual. His soul altar spun a little bit and his god domain changed. Countless stars appeared like precious gemstones. Shiryen looked like he was immersing in the sea of gems. Light shone gloriously around him. Star power Upanishad was activated. Stars around him started to revolve fast. Shiryen put himself in the star sea, flying as he pleased. His body flashed and arrived at different stars in just a blink. No one could detect his whereabouts. So many perilous attacks swarmed over him, but they could neither find nor lock Shuryen in the sea star. At the same time, the starry sea started to wear out their energy. Another god domain. The old man's voice reverberated in the air. Apparently, he was startled. His voice trembled. In the center of his echo, a flood created by fierce energy stormed towards the center of the star sea. Boom! Shuryen's god domain seemed to take a formidable hit. The space of 10 meters around him shattered. Broken stars fell. The energy of his star power Upanishad was in disorder. All illusions vanished. Their energy fused into one big flow, turning into the furious flood current with a face that looked exactly like his. It snatched down from the sky and was about to swallow Shuryen. The island broke. Seawater ran fiercely, flooding the island. This fatal scene looked like the doomsday was coming. Shuryen felt his soul trembling seeing this. Death Seal. His god domain changed again. Massive seals condensed in the sky. His dead Upanishad covered the whole area. The dead seals stamped the air. Shortly, Shuryen was surrounded with numerous dead seal, covering the entire area. His negative energy crazily poured into the domain. His god body was swollen. Energy flowed massively in his vessels unceasingly. Brutal energy gushed out from him, making each dead seal as big as a small mountain. They bombarded everything he saw. Wicked dead Upanishad spread out, restraining all of the oncoming attacks. At this moment, his quick life Upanishad found a strange beam of living being energy undersea. Gotcha. Shuryen showed a faint smile, his face still stern. Big dead seals gathered and combined, making a giant hand that could even cover the whole sky. That hand then furiously pounded the sea bottom. Just like a breaking mirror, countless fragments of the illusion scattered under this attack. Shuryen's surroundings became normal. Yalin and Taimu were fighting with their own illusions near him. The illusions entangling them also had vitality and energy fluctuations. However, as Shuryen maintained his god domain in the mode of dead and life intent domain, all living energy fluctuations of creatures in his domain were amplified and became clearer. Shuryen couldn't see the difference between Yalin, Taimu, and their replicas, but in his god domain, the living fluctuations of the illusions weren't as clear as theirs. It was enough for him. He could find their real bodies now. A deep hole appeared near him which was created by the bombarding of his dead seals. Immense gray mist diffused from that hole. A skinny, rickety figure appeared in that gray mist. It was a sloppy, dirty old man with disheveled hairs and scabs. He was wearing a muddy, long gray robe. His face was also covered in dust, but his eyes were sparkling and fiery. 3 powers Upanishad. 3 different god domains. Boy, how did you do that? Using 3 powers alternatively to break my 1,000 fantasy fields domain, I can't deny that I surrendered. I really want to know how you could create 3 god domains at the same time. The skinny old man floated in the gray mist like a wandering ghost. He looked at Shuryen with a dark, gloomy gaze. I don't know. I've just created them not long ago. During the battle with you, I got to know how to shift between them subtly. Indeed, magical things could happen. Shuryen was indifferent. If you want to use the 1,000 fantasy fields domain to delude me, I don't think it will be easy anymore. I can distinguish any creature in my domain to see if they are real or not. Evil power Upanishad, the old man mumbled then snorted. Don't think that breaking my 1,000 fantasy fields domain means you won. Since you have only the first sky of King God Realm cultivation base, I can defeat you using only my power and my god body. The reason why I didn't show up is that I wanted to save energy. But if you break my god domain, I have no choice but to widen your knowledge. Let's see how vast the gap between my 3rd sky cultivation base and your 1st sky cultivation base is. He attacked immediately. Shuryen became serious. He didn't wait until the old man struck his first attack. A thought arose and the crazy hissing echoed. 3 bone thorns were invisible, leaving only the ear-piercing whistle in the air. They were moving across spaces, gathering energy. The old man suddenly became alert. He slightly discolored and squinted as if he was trying to detect the source of the sound. Shiryan immediately entered the rampage realm. Shiryan's eyes turned blood red as negative energy gushed out from his body. Pallid tentacles extended from each of his acupuncture points. This was the first time he urged the rampage realm after entering the king god realm. His refined body looked like iron or jade shriveled at the moment energy was accumulated. Scarlet halo bloomed from his body and reflected in his eyes, making him look more eccentric and evil. Bloodthirsty, wild energy erupted like a volcano from his god body before fusing with his magical dead intent domain. The coverage of the soul burial ground was tripled, reaching an astonishing 30 meters. Desperation, bloodthirstiness, resentment, and other negative feelings multiplied. The ability to steal life force increased strongly. In this moment, Shiryan looked like a demon that crept out from the bottom layer of hell. His body diffused the aura of termination. His existence seemed to destroy all creatures in the world. 8 chapters for today. Happy now. Chapter 787, Counterattack. Chapter 787, Counterattack. After breaking through to the King God realm, this was the first time Shiryan had used all of his powers. In his previous dozens of battles, he had encountered some second sky of King God realm warriors. However, such characters couldn't stimulate all of his powers. Shiryan didn't use much energy to kill them. Only this old man with his third sky of King God realm and the eccentric power Upanishad had made him use the rampage realm, which had taken all of his energy. Standing on the freezing ground, Shiryan squinted. His blood-red eyes were sharp and cold like sabers that gazed at that old fellow. The hissing of the 3 bone thorns was like a crying ghost which irritated people. The bone thorns with space power could be invisible and didn't even have shadows. It was hard to locate or lock them down using soul consciousness. Although he was at the third sky of King God realm, in the horrifying buzzing, he had no other way around but spending a part of his energy to stay cautious, preventing the 3 bone thorns. Inner fantasy thousandfolds. The old man lowered his voice and shouted. His shriveled body leaped up all of a sudden. Then, the senile man turned into a 10-meter-tall giant. His skinny body swelled as if it contained endless power. He faced the sky and roared while swinging his arm. With the sound of bone exploding, a palm pressed down from the sky, snatching Shiryan, covering all of the area where he was standing. Refined energy compacted in his palm like so many electric god dragons, creating the whole new world in that instant. Shiryan looked at the sky. He saw many shadows in that giant palm. They were Shi Jian, Shi Tai, Yang Tian Emperor, Yi Tian Imo, Xia Xan Yen, He Qing Man, and Bing Qing Tong sisters. In that palm were all the people Shiryan cared about. At this moment, they became his archenemies. They were storming towards him with cold and sinister faces. Each of his loved ones became the killer who wanted to take his life. Energy revolved everywhere, swarming toward Shiryan. His soul altar was affected. His god's soul was enchanted. Sorrow, disappointment, and deep bitterness arose in his heart. While he was puzzled, those people became the real death which wanted to kill him. Heart delusion technique. This was the bizarre and evil feature of the old man's power Upanishad. It could affect people's hearts, delude their minds, and make them believe that all that they saw were true. Seeing his family members and friends want to take his life, Shiryan, this cold and harsh person, felt lost. His heart made him restrain his enormous energy as he was afraid that he could hurt his loved ones. You've forgotten us and you just want to live your good life, don't you? Why haven't you returned yet? Don't you know that we are struggling in the dead puddle of the Grace mainland because of energy shortage? Now that you have a good life, do you remember us? You forgot us, didn't you? His family members and friends threw question after question at him which messed his mind up more. Shiryan was baffled and didn't know how to answer them. His mind was chaotic. His will was reduced. He couldn't release all of his powers. At this moment, Shiryan fell under such struggling circumstances. The giant body that the old man had created beamed a sinister smile while his other hand also pressed down. He performed the other magical illusions a second time, which was to deceive people's hearts. Those silhouettes stormed over, bombarding their attacks on him. Each figure had turned into a sharp attack with pure energy. All fell on Shiryan. Boom, boom, boom. Shiryan's upright body was hit hard, settling down to dozens of meters underground. A massive hole appeared right where he had just stood. Illusions disappeared. Shiryan was kneeling inside a 100-meter-large hole. Blood covered his entire body. His bones cracked and so did his eyes. He woke up immediately. Intensive pain spread across his body while his energy was chaotic. Forces in his body shot like lightning. All had lost its balance. The struggling Shiryan thought that if he died, he would feel better. The circulation of his energy and power was stagnant. The giant body of the old man stood vigorously. He stooped and watched Shiryan in his 100-meter-deep hole. He was surprised. "Kid, your god body isn't broken yet." With his third Sky of King God Realm cultivation base, the first Sky of King God Realm warrior's body couldn't bear much of his attacks. It would explode and only the soul altar could escape. He thought that Shiryan must be dead under his savage attack. Unfortunately, he had underestimated the toughness of Shiryan's god body. His attack had just hurt Shiryan badly, and it couldn't explode his body. "Hey, old freak, I won't let you live so comfortably." Shiryan had blood all over his face. Blood also trickled from the corners of his eyes. He looked brutally angry. "I hate family members and friends' illusions the most. Since you're so shameless and sinister, don't blame me for giving you the same treatment." Then, Shiryan shot out of the hole like a sharp sword. His god domain was filled with negative feelings like death, desperation, resentment, bloodthirstiness, and more. They condensed into a torrential sea of negative energy. Just like the beast getting out of its reign, it flooded over the old man like a Milky Way, covering his entire area. Not only did the old man know how to delude people with illusions. In his god domain, Shiryan knew how to use the same mysterious trick. Filled with resentment, Shiryan's god soul manipulated the 3 bone thorns and got them out of the space slits. As soon as they appeared, the 3 bone thorns aimed at the old man's eyes and nape, stabbing directly like 3 silver lightning strikes. The old man discolored. He didn't expect that the bone thorns could have space power and be so cunning. He urged his energy, creating moving halo covering his body. Those moving halos looked like small fish swimming around him. When the 3 bone thorns arrived, the halo entangled them all. Shiryan's bone thorns looked like they were tied by something invisible, sinking into a swamp. The bone thorns Shiryan had refined himself were made of a bone of a level 11 beast with more than 10 auxiliary materials, which greatly enhanced their hardness and sharpness. This weapon of his had reached rank 1 divine grade. Although it was the defense of a 3rd Sky of King God Realm warrior, hurriedly countering the 3 bone thorns had used all of his power. While the old man used his energy to create the moving halos that prevented the 3 bone thorns, he didn't have extra energy to create more illusions. Shortly after, all illusions that were affecting Shiryan, Taimu, and Yalan vanished. Shiryan used his negative feelings to create the negative sea engulf the old man. He didn't hesitate and clapped his hands in front of his chest. Lights congregated between his palms, creating a big light sword. Shiryan slashed his sword, fiercely stabbing through the negative sea and aiming at the old man's glabella. At the same time, Yalan and Taimu released their god domains after they had got rid of the illusions. Tornadoes swept around. Earth changed. Beams of furious energy fell on the sky like shooting light from outer space. They all aimed at the old man. The 3 bone thorns struggled to move due to the moving halos. As if they had consciousness, they retreated and disappeared into folds of space. At this moment, the negative sea, which was filled with evil and wicked negative emotions, had engulfed the old man. Although he was good at deluding people, the old man was affected. He seemed to be dragged into hell. What he saw were all the bloody ghosts and demons that surrounded him. His god soul was affected so that he wouldn't be able to create the illusions in just a short period. Right at this moment, the light sword slashed down. This sword made the old man stop making illusions and to focus on gathering energy to create the moving halos around his body for defense. The light sword slashed down grumblingly. Light shot out everywhere. The beams of light that had created the divine sword flew out, shifting into tens of thousands of stars that darted towards him. Twirling gusts wreaked havoc everywhere, covering the old man. Under his feet, a heavy restraining force pressed the old man down on the ground, keeping him from flying away. Yalin and Taimu were both the second sky of King God Realm warriors. As they were the troopers under Karthu's command, they had enough fighting experience. They were good at continuous attacking. After they got rid of the illusions, they immediately released their powers. The intimidating scene they created was not less than Shurian's. Swoosh! A wisp of divine light appeared. Shurian walked to that old man. His soul flickered and the god domain changed again. Both of his hands joined together, and a magical effect was created. He held the space domain tightly in his palms, making an incomparable space mystery. Massive light balls bombarded the old man instantly. Space imprisonment. Shurian shouted. Crack, crack, crack. Cracking sounds echoed from the space where the old man stood. It seemed that everything there was imprisoned. However, wind and earth power Upanishads of Yalin and Taimu were exceptions. They were still flowing furiously. The old man's body stopped moving. Countless moving lights around him were frozen eccentrically. Yalin and Taimu's powers hit him immediately. Explosions continued. Light sparks shot out from the old man's god body. Shortly after, that old man looked like Shurian with blood covering him entirely as if hundreds of sabers and swords had slashed him. He was in utter confusion with disheveled hair, giving him a funny and pitiful look. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The hissing sound of the bone thorns arose again. The 3 bone thorns appeared, stabbing his chest and back. PFFF. The bone thorns pierced the old man's god body. Bones cracked. The old man spat out blood. However, his face glowed strangely. He then disappeared like a ghost, leaving no trace. All of his aura, energy fluctuations, and life magnetic field were gone. No one could detect him. Yalin and Taimu walked over after the old man disappeared. They frowned while searching, touching their purgatory token to see if they could sense something. 8 chapters for today. Happy now. Chapter 788. Break into the Prohibited Area. Chapter 788. Break into the Prohibited Area. I sense living energy fluctuations in 5 different directions. Yalin stroked the purgatory token, frowning while scanning everything around her. She talked with a slight headache. Taimu scowled and had a worried look. I don't know how this old freak affected the purgatory token to deceive us. His aura currently signals in 5 different directions. I don't know which way we will find him. Shurian walked over to them. Blood dripped from his body. He wiped away a trickle of blood on the corner of his mouth, smiling coldly. The signals in all 5 directions are all fake. This old freak is really cunning. Yalin and Taimu couldn't help but stare at him for a few seconds. Later on, Yalin said, You are truly fierce. You have become so mighty after breaking through to the King God Realm. In the previous battle, Shurian was the main force as his power had stopped the old man for a while. That was the golden chance for Yalin and Taimu to attack and wound him. If Shurian hadn't distracted the old man, they would have had no way to get rid of the illusions so quickly. And of course, they would have had no chance to damage that man. They had seen the battle between Shurian and the old man. They understood that they didn't have the means to counter that old fellow, but Shurian did. Although their realms were 1 level higher than his, they had had no way of dealing with that old fellow. The powers Shurian had demonstrated frightened them. Follow me. I know where he is. F***ck him. This old dog is too cunning. He has provoked us to separate and make us kill each other so that he could clean us up at the end. When he saw that we didn't buy it, he used the illusions to delude us. Basically, he didn't want to spare any one of us alive. Shurian snorted, then continued, I've left a wisp of soul consciousness in his sea of consciousness. I can locate him. The directions our purgatory tokens have sensed are all made up. None of them is true. You're at the first sky of King God realm, but you could leave a beam of your soul consciousness in his sea of consciousness. Are you sure? Yalin's eyes brightened, not believing him. Taimu gawked. Impossible. You and he are at two different levels. It's possible that he can leave a beam of his soul consciousness in your sea of consciousness. But how could you? I've cultivated special powers, Upanishad. My soul consciousness has mixed with space power. It can avoid his sensing for a short while. However, it won't last long. We should hurry. If we are too late and he deletes my wisp of soul consciousness, we won't be able to find him. Yalin and Taimu reacted quickly to what he said. They nodded and didn't linger. Shiryen took the lead. His body flashed like the rainbow, weaving through the forest like a shuttle. Yalin and Taimu stayed close behind him. After 1 hour, he halted, looking at the valley in front of them and waving his hand. This place. Yalin and Taimu stopped, looking at that valley disbelievingly. Impossible, they shouted. The valley in between the mountains was covered in layers of gray shadows and mists. Folds of barriers were set that covered the whole area. Chaotic energy stayed inside the barriers particularly. It seemed to hide the extreme dangers. That area was apparently a prohibited land in the extreme purgatory field. The magical extreme purgatory field had so many similar areas. When normal participants encountered such places, they would try to avoid them at all costs. No one dared to intrude. Rumor said that those barriers were made of the initial natural formations of this land. The imperial master of several previous generations had created them. Let alone the participants, even the owner of the divine nation Du Tianji couldn't understand all the mysteries of those barriers. Before the participants entered the extreme purgatory field, the host would explain and tell them to stay away from those prohibited areas. According to them, those forbidden areas were the key nodes that created the extreme purgatory field. These areas hid so many mysterious dangers. If they entered those places rashly, their soul altars could possibly vanish. They could also break the balance of the extreme purgatory field, which would prevent it from functioning properly. Almost all the participants followed this rule. They wouldn't enter these places willingly. Out of those who dared to intrude, not many got out alive. Magical energy fluctuations signaled from that valley, stating that it was one of the banned lands of the extreme purgatory field. Shiryen wouldn't dare intrude such a place if he still had his previous cultivation base. He would leave early to get away from running into any unexpected troubles. However, it was different now. That cunning old fellow was hiding in there. Once he could recover and show up for a second time, he would bring greater dangers. If they didn't take the chance to destroy him when he got hurt, Shiryen would never forgive himself for not preventing this wicked man from doing evil deeds. He dared to get in there. What are we afraid of? Shiryen glared at Yalin and Taimu, his face persistent. Whether you are coming with me or not, I'm going in there. This cunning old fella has grudges against us. He won't leave us alone easily. He is much more familiar with the extreme purgatory field than we are, and he can even dodge the purgatory token sensing. If he is alive, he will always be some hidden danger. We must destroy him now. That freak has joined the extreme purgatory field many times. He must be familiar with this place. If he dared to get inside, I think he has some backup. We don't know anything about this place. Isn't it too risky? Taimu said with a worried expression on his face. He couldn't make up his mind. Yalin frowned as she struggled to decide whether to get in there or leave. Perhaps the prohibited area hides some secrets related to the extreme purgatory field. Maybe due to those secrets, that old man could dodge the purgatory token sensing. If he might know that, why can't we? Shiryen pondered for a while and then shouted, I must get in there. Then, he flew like a sharp sword piercing toward the barriers covering the valley. Boom! It was like he had bumped into a giant rubber ball. His flying body bounced back with a tremendous force. An immense energy ran through his body. The impact made him dizzy. Confused, Shiryen went back over to Yalin and Taimu. His face darkened. Strong barriers. Hard to break. I can't pierce through it. Damn it. How did he do it? He must know the mysteries of the barriers. Yalin's face was somber. She hesitated for a while and said, I think we should give up. If we take risks and intrude, I'm not sure if we can gain the upper hand in his familiar fighting arena. However, if we attack him outside, we can join hands and win. Taimu supported her. Shiryen, don't act rashly. Being stubborn isn't always good. People who can achieve big accomplishments are all crazy and stubborn. Shiryen contemplated for 1 second and laughed sinisterly. It is just a barrier. I think I will be able to break it. Then, his thoughts flickered. The sky-breaking shuttle appeared from the storage ring. He sent a beam of his soul consciousness into the shuttle. I want to break that barrier. How much energy do you need? 1/3 of your power. Okay. Wisps of fine energy circulated, rolling grumblingly and massively pouring into the sky-breaking shuttle. Receiving the energy from his body, the sky-breaking shuttle, designed to break all kind of barriers and restrictions, turned into a shooting light that tore layers of barriers, flying toward the center of the forbidden land. Shiryen turned around, glaring at Taimu and Yalan. He ignored their astonished faces, turned into a bunch of light before disappearing shortly. He broke it? Did he just break it? Taimu's eyes showed that he couldn't believe what he just saw. He shook his head. Who is this boy? How can he be so magical? No wonder why he has the potential to replace Ao Gera. He is such a tough character. I finally know why Master Karthu favors him. Yalan contemplated for a while, her face astonished. She turned to Taimu. What should we do now? Taimu was hesitant. We don't know the situations in there. If we barge in, I'm not sure if we will be safe. The old man is a third sky of King God Realm warrior. This place is his den. I don't think intruding is a good idea. Yalan pondered for a while and nodded in agreement. Forget it. We should wait for a while. I know intruding into someone's territory would be taking a big risk. While they were talking, the light passage created by the sky-breaking shuttle gradually vanished, cutting off their entry. Even if they wanted to get in there, they lost their chance. The scene changed subtly. Shiryen was standing in a beautiful blooming valley. 2 streams crossed each other, which were clear enough to see the bottom. Small fish swam back and forth happily. Wild grass grew up to people's waist in every corner of the valley. They looked like the fuzz of a giant beast. The air was fresh, cool, and humid in the valley. Earth and heaven energy were very thick. The wild grass was mowed in a small area of the valley where a small cottage stood. The door was open, revealing an old, pale man using pellets to recover. He was the old man Shiryen had encountered. In the moment Shiryen saw the man, the old man also noticed him. He jolted up, his expression changing dramatically in surprise. He shouted, "Kid, how did you get in here? Didn't those barriers make you struggle? How could you?" "Nothing is impossible." Shiryen frowned. His eyes were still blood-red as he was maintaining the rampage realm. Energy boiled and rolled in his body massively, his aura brutal and malignant. He walked step by step towards that old man. His eyes became more ruthlessly bloodthirsty. "You got hurt badly. You want to hide and recover in here so that you could continue playing with us. Haha, you have a good place indeed. Seems like you've been staying here for a long time and got familiar with the conditions." That old man stopped restoring his aura and walked out of his cottage. In front of him were the 2 crossing streams. He had installed the net to restrain the fish in the streams. It seemed that he kept the fish for food. The whole scene was beautiful and harmonious. The old man stood by the stream and he stooped to watch the small fish, inhaling the pleasant fragrance of flowers permeating the air. He wasn't tense or anxious at all. He even beamed a smile at Shiryen. "I'm glad you came. My purgatory token is here now." Shiryen smiled, slightly shaking his head. "It won't be so easy." Chapter 789, Deterrent Force. Chapter 789, Deterrent Force. A corner of the Purgatory Star. Leona, Aogu Duo, and the others frowned while looking at the lake, their faces astounded. Yalan and Taimu reappeared. After the battle between Shiryen and the old man finished, their surroundings reappeared. In the area they had fought, there was a deep pit that could be recognized from 1,000 miles away. Yalan and Taimu were discussing something. "Where is Shiryen?" Karthu knitted his brows. There was a battle. Who did they fight? Serene. Possibly. Rochester curled his lips. But where's that kid? If Yalin and Taimu fought Serene, who would win? It would be a pretty even match, Delay squinted. Anyway, it seems like Yalin and Taimu won. Serene disappeared. Did he get killed? That was what he wanted to see. Karthu, your subordinates are still enthusiastic. Haha. Aogu Duo grinned. Serene has killed a lot of people. He brought death, now he has to bear it. If he got killed, it would not be abnormal. Did you order Yalin and Taimu to do something? Leona's face darkened. A gleam of brutal thought sparkled deep in her dark green eyes. Karthu was scared out of his wits, and he kept shaking his head. How could I? I like that kid a lot. I have treated him well. In my gravitational room, he spoke with Yalin and Taimu. I didn't think they would battle each other. As he explained, Leona snorted and didn't say more. Some force had covered that area. I don't know what happened, but I think the three of them won't compete against each other, Du Tianlu said uncertainly while rubbing his chin. What happened? Karthu mumbled to himself, curious about the situation. The situation was similar in the dark firmament star. Du Tianji also had the suspicions. He looked at that giant mirror with astonishment. He was baffled for a while, then muttered, "Our divine nation hasn't had an imperial master for a long time. I know the previous imperial masters all lived in the extreme purgatory field. That place should store their inheritance. After this training ends, it's time for us to find an imperial master. How about the business you have done?" He glared at Ziyao. Ziyao's bold brows knitted together. Her beautiful eyes flared a strange halo. She pondered for a while, then shook her head. He doesn't want to take the imperial master role. The knot in his heart hasn't been untied yet. It seems that I will have to work on him myself. Du Tianji nodded as if he already knew this result beforehand. After screening him, I can say that he is currently one of the most impressive alchemists of the entire Raging Flame star area. If he agrees to assist the Divine Nation, we will have more strong experts. Sigh, only if we had an imperial master, he could inherit from the few generations before him. We would have been able to give a clear path. What a pity. It is shameful for me to talk to him. Ziyao kept silent, her face complicated. She didn't know exactly what had happened that year. She wasn't sure if Du Tianji's shame was related to her mother's death. Ziyao, you're not young anymore. Do you have anyone in mind right now? Du Tianji suddenly asked. Ziyao's beautiful face flushed. She shook her head shyly. I don't want to think about this for the time being. Previously, Old Fan of the 9-Star Chamber of Commerce told me about his son. You've heard about his only son, Fan Tianpa. His background and abilities are not weaker than Ao Gera. In the Raging Flame star area, the name of Fan Tianpa is well known. His bearings aren't bad either. I heard that he is handsome. He is also excellent in many aspects. You know Old Fan's status and position in the 9-Star Chamber of Commerce. If we want to talk about the perfect match for you in the Raging Flame star area, he would be the one. What do you think? No. Zia shook her head after contemplating for a while. I don't really know about this at the moment. All right then. I also need time to think. Consider him. Du Tianji's eyes sparkled. The ethereal god realm is a big door. I don't dare go before preparing. However, I have to do it. If something happens to you, you better find the man in the solar star exploding fragment field. He will take care of you. Father, if something happens to you, what about our divine nation? Ziyao forced a smile. The 5 great feudal vassals have their own forces. They're almighty. Without you, who would suppress them? Du Tianji kept silent. After a while, he answered deliberately, I believe in their loyalty to the divine nation. But delay. Zia wanted to say something, but she didn't finish. Do not babble. Du Tianji shouted, giving an angry look. When I'm about to break through, I'll have my arrangement. Ziyao nodded begrudgingly. Her look shifted to the shining mirror once again. She didn't know why she was worrying about Shuryen. Perhaps it was because she didn't want anything bad to happen to him. She had heard about Fan Tianpa of the 9-Star Chamber of Commerce. She knew he was a great character. But she didn't know why she had no interest in him. One of the forbidden lands of the extreme purgatory field. The old man, who was good at using illusions, stood nonchalantly where the two streams crossed each other. He silently watched the fish swimming back and forth. Are you familiar with this place? Serene walked over to him in a normal pace. His calmness was scarily abnormal. Yeah, I got used to this place. I survived the extreme purgatory field on many close occasions thanks to this place. The old man scooped water with his hands and drank it. He stooped and chuckled. I'm hurt, and so are you. In this place, you won't have any backup. You didn't recognize how perilous this situation is for you, did you? I'm glad you came. This means I can get your purgatory token, get out of this damn place alive, and gain back my freedom. You think so? Serene grinned. Then I want to see how you can take the purgatory token on my waist. Yeah, you're right. We're both wounded. But there's one thing you'll never be better than me at. I am younger than you, and my recovery ability is much faster than what you think. Young? Being young is useful, my ass. The old man finally stood up, looking at him in the eyes. Kid, if you want to court death, don't blame me. You just want a purgatory token, right? Serene was surprised for a while. He said, in fact, your wish is easy to fulfill. If I can help you, will you share the secrets you know with me? It's just a purgatory token. I'm sure I can get it for you. The old man was caught off guard, but he still laughed out of interest. What do you mean you will get a purgatory token for me? You know what that means, right? I don't know you. But I know you want to kill a participant, the young, talented, and favored subordinate of one of the 5 feudal vassals, right? Will you do this for me? Why not? Serene pursed his lips. If I don't kill them, someone else will. I have someone I must kill in this place. He's hunting me down with all of his best efforts, too. The old man didn't hasten. He stretched leisurely, glaring at Serene. Tell me, what happened? Have you ever heard about Aogera? Serene pondered before asking. The old man's eyes got colder. He snorted. Of course I know him. Aoguduo's nephew, a genius of the divine nation. You want to kill him? Serene nodded. You've been idle in the extreme purgatory field for so many years. But how do you know about Aogera? It seems like you hate him. What happened? I haven't been out for all these years, but people will be put in the extreme purgatory field from time to time. From them, I get information of the world outside. The old man snorted with a cold visage. I don't like people who are related to Aoguduo. Aoguduo has imprisoned me here. Aogera is his nephew who has outstanding performance. Of course I have to notice him. If I had known he was here, I would have found and targeted him. Whatever will irritate Aoguduo, I will do them all. Aoguduo captured you? Haha, interesting. Seems like we have common goals. Serene laughed evilly. By the way, what did you do to get yourself jailed here? It has nothing to do with you, snorted the old man. Serene just laughed, unbothered by his response. 100 meters away from the old man, he took off his clothes, discarding them conveniently before stepping into the stream to wash the bloodstains on his body. The old man's eyes suddenly sparkled with divine light as he focused on the young man. Using the stream's fresh water to wash away the blood on his body, Serene revealed a refined iron-like body that didn't show even a single cut. The old man had fought him just 1 hour ago. He understood that although Serene's god body didn't explode, he received a lot of cuts and wounds. Otherwise, he wouldn't have had so much blood on his body. However, Serene now stood vigorous without a single scratch. Energy in his body circulated smoothly. His god body shimmered, showing that he was in his peak condition. Nothing in his body provided evidence that he got hurt badly. After 1 hour of adjusting his aura and energy, there was not much change for the old man. The old man still had a lot of wounds on his body. The holes deep to the bone that the 3 bone thorns left on his chest and back were still there. His waist, abdomen, arms, and legs were covered with cuts which were caused by Yalin and Taimu's bombarding powers. Serene was no longer damaged. This discovery silenced the old man as he had planned to attack him one more time. He suddenly realized that Serene intruding this place alone and bragging in front of him wasn't just mere boasting. There was a reason why he had such confidence. In front of the old man, Serene washed before putting on new, clean garments. All of a sudden, he urged the power of the immortal demon blood, pouring it into his arm. His iron fist pounded the ground grumblingly. Boom, boom. The impact from his fist touching the ground caused great tremors. An area of several thousand meters seemed to get hit by a meteor. The ground cracked as if there was an earthquake. The pits that appeared were so deep that people wouldn't be able to see the bottom. The condensed energy of the immortal demon blood was sent to the ground, creating an earth-shaking scene. The tremendous energy ran deep under the extreme purgatory field. Grumbling noise from the tremors continually echoed. The mountain near the valley was trembling as if it was about to collapse. Such a scale of damage was really scary indeed. Even the old man at the King God realm discolored in fright. He didn't dare act rashly anymore. Yen retrieved his powers, looking at the dozen-meter-deep pit in front of him with satisfaction. He turned around, smiling at the old man. You still want to ambush and kill me, eh? Yeah. Do you still think you would succeed? The old man's face darkened and he said nothing. Can we talk for a while? Yen calmed down, strolling towards the old man, his face casual and peaceful. He wasn't worried about being ambushed. The old man's face was gloomy and uncertain. He gazed at Yen for a while and said, True. You've proven your abilities. I can't kill you easily, it is true. All right, I'll go with the less risky option. What do you want to know? Chapter 790, Forbidden Areas Wonder. Chapter 790, Forbidden Areas Wonder. I want to know how you are able to avoid the sensing powers of the Purgatory Token. How can you hide your life magnetic field? And how did you enter this forbidden place? Yen stood firmly by the stream. Although he remained alert, he looked nonchalant. Yen didn't think that this old man would attack him for the second time. He could tell that the old man should understand now. Indeed, he didn't dare attack anymore. Like Yen, the old man calmed down eventually. What you want to know is related to this stone. While talking, he took out a cube-shaped stone from his sleeve. That stone had some patterns that looked like natural drawings or formations. It held magical energy that made the patterns move and shimmer. The old man bared his teeth in a broad smile. He threw the stone at the ground. Try it again. Yen sent a wisp of soul consciousness into the Purgatory Token. Magically, the life magnetic of the old man was visible in the Purgatory Token. The token was even able to precisely sense the strength of his life energy. Yen's eyes brightened, studying the cube stone. He said with astonishment, This stone can cut off the sensing of the Purgatory Token and keep my soul consciousness from detecting you. Yes, the old man smiled arrogantly. He quickly picked up the cube stone. With this gem, the contestants in the extreme purgatory field can't find me with their Purgatory Token. With this gem, I can enter 99 forbidden places of the extreme purgatory field easily without worrying about the barriers. The cube stone disappeared into his sleeve. Yen's sensing did not work again. He couldn't use the Purgatory Token to lock the old man. Although they were standing face to face, his soul consciousness couldn't sense the living fluctuations of this old fella. This cube stone seemed to be able to hide the god's soul and the soul altar. It was a marvelous device. Where did you get it? Yen was curious. I can't tell you. I can only say that there are several stones like this. Except for me, the others who keep this stone are all the craziest prisoners of the extreme purgatory field. After participating in the extreme purgatory field for several times, we agreed to keep this a secret. Even the owner of the divine nation Du Tianji doesn't know about it. The old man grinned. It is also why I've joined the extreme purgatory field 5 times but remained alive. If I encounter someone I can't fight, I hide in the forbidden places. Yen's eyes brightened. He nodded, no wonder. Seems like you've had good encounters in the extreme purgatory field. You said there are 99 forbidden places like this place. Do they all have layers of barriers? Yes, 99 in total. I guess they are the formation eyes and the key nodes that contain the extreme purgatory field. The existences of the 99 forbidden lands maintain the balance and the magical effect of the extreme purgatory field. Only while holding this square stone can you get in there safely. The old man gazed at him, his eyes bizarre. It is shocking that you were able to get in here. How? As far as I've known, even I, at the third sky of King God Realm, can't get through such complicated barriers without this cube stone. I can't tell you either, Shiryen beamed a faint smile. Everyone has his own secrets. If you don't want to talk much, neither will I. Fine. Now, I will take you somewhere. The old man pondered for a while then smiled. Perhaps you will like it. Oh, right. I'm Jiangge. You. Shiryen. Come with me. I'll take you there. The old man named Jiangge didn't bother with the blood stains on his body. He became more excited, walking quickly through the cottage to another place deeper inside the valley. Shiryen didn't linger. He nodded and followed him quietly. Flowers bloomed everywhere in this valley, grass also present in the entire area. Water murmured. Fish swam. The whole place was peaceful and harmonious like a fairyland. No matter how hard people could imagine, they would never picture a wonderful place like this in the bloody extreme purgatory field. The Forbidden Lands were intimidatingly dangerous, but they also hid a different world. Jiangge looked very familiar with this place. While walking deep into the valley, he explained, just like me, those who have the same cube stones occupy their own territory. Yeah, they're the forbidden places. 5 out of the 99 forbidden places are actually wonderful. You will see soon. Shiryen listened to him attentively before asking, if you stayed in the forbidden land of the extreme purgatory field after 3 years of bloody training, will people be able to detect you? Jiangge turned around, laughing. What do you think? People out there can't find you, can they? Shiryen replied uncertainly. Of course not. I'm being honest. After each time I used my forbidden territory, I always got out. However, the 4 others who hold the territory of the 4 wonderful forbidden places have never left. They stay in the forbidden lands all the time. The owner of the divine nation deemed them dead. He doesn't know that they've survived and lived a better life. Since I have something to do, I have to go out. The other 4 consider the forbidden lands their home. They no longer want to leave. Jiangge didn't turn to see him. He explained before walking away. Shiryen's eyes sparkled strangely, amazed at what he was hearing. If what this old man said was true, there were 4 other people like him in the extreme purgatory field with the cube stones. Despite the fact that the lands were harsh, they have stayed in extreme purgatory field for a long time. Age and realms for the other 4 were probably not normal. They must all be tough characters. Since they got the cube stones, even Du Tianji couldn't find them or know their situations. Although they can dodge the purgatory token sensing, why did they stay for several hundred years in the extreme purgatory field? Soon, he realized the answer. Jiangge suddenly stopped, pointing at the end of the valley and shouted, "Here we are." Shiryen stopped walking. At first glance, he was dumbstruck. It was a grand palace. Stood between the 2 mountains at the end of the valley was a grand palace. The high mountain that jutted up to the sky provided shade for this palace. Thick clouds hovered above the palace like water ink that blocked light and didn't disperse. The grand palace radiated immense divine light. It looked like this palace was made of gold, jade, and gemstone. It was tall and pleasing to the eyes. Stone pillars stood in the center, supporting the palace. This scenery looked exactly like what you would find in a fairyland. At this moment, they were standing next to the nearest pillar which could even shield the whole sky. Lifting up their heads to look at the palace, they felt so small. Magical energy fluctuations diffused from time to time from the foundation pillar of the palace. They rippled out like magnificent waves. Each wave had at least dozens of layers, and each layer was a magical barrier. They were all mysterious and conveyed the might of nature, which silenced them in awe. Instinctively, Shiryen wanted to go in. Jiangge shouted all of a sudden, "Watch out!" Shiryen halted, turning around to look at him with astonishment. Those rippling waves can easily take your life away. I've been here for so many years, but I can't dissolve it. You shouldn't take risks, all right? Jiangge grinned bizarrely. The other 4 situations aren't different from mine. They also have a grand palace like this in their forbidden places. Do you get why they aren't trying to leave so quickly now? Because of this palace? Shiryen was surprised. Nodding, Jiangji's face was solemn. I can tell you that the 5 palaces in the extreme purgatory field should belong the 5 previous imperial masters of the Dark Firmament Divine Nation. Du Tianji might know about this, but it is not certain. The former imperial masters hid something from the owner of the Divine Nation. That is why they didn't let him know about the mysteries of this place. I don't know what they hid in there, but I'm sure that these palaces have something. The other 4 also believe the same thing. They aren't hurrying to leave because they want to discover this secret. Shi Yan discolored in fright. If I didn't have a reason, I would never leave this place. I would break the defense there and get into the palace to see what's in there. Jiang Ji's face was serious. Kid, I brought you here to tell you that. If you give me a purgatory token, I will give you the cube stone. Although I can't make it, I think you can. I can't wait here any longer. I need to leave. Just consider this an exchange. I'm sure you won't bear a loss. You got the cube stone, but you can't get in there? Shi Yan didn't agree immediately. He was still suspicious. That stone can only bring me through the barriers of the forbidden place. I can't get in the palace. I've tried many times. My knowledge and power aren't enough to solve this problem. Perhaps my realm isn't enough. Jiang Ge forced a smile. You have the 3rd sky of King God realm cultivation base, and you can't do anything. Why do you think I can? Shi Yan burst out laughing, shaking his head. I won't be fooled. You don't want to fight, but you want to keep me in this place for the rest of my life. You want to use a secret to bind me. Good plan. Don't you want to know what is in there? Jiang Ge frowned. I do. But I don't want to do things in vain. I don't want my efforts to be in vain by wasting time in this place where even birds don't want to poop. Shi Yan shook his head. Birds don't even poop? Jiang Ge didn't know whether to cry or smile. Kid, you don't know your fortune. Why did you say so? Once the 3 years of the training in the extreme purgatory field ends, the sensitive feelings towards earth and heaven powers will disappear. Why only 3 years? Because they can only hold it for 3 years. No more. After 3 years, the extreme purgatory field will be like other places. It won't be able to offer assistance to warriors and their realms. 94 out of the 99 forbidden areas will be the same. The energy there will disappear. However, the 5 forbidden areas with the palaces won't disappear. The sensitive sensing of natural energy will remain here forever. Jiang Ge shouted. Shi Yan was shaken. He finally understood the heavy conditions that this old man offered him. Chapter 791. Disappear quietly. Chapter 791. Disappear quietly. If a warrior doesn't go out and enjoy the subtle mysteries of the extreme purgatory field to understand natural powers better every day, even if he has a bad innate endowment, accumulating for years can help with their understanding of powers and realms. This forbidden land was a magical area that could help warriors progress their realm. Staying in this area, a man's perception of realms and powers becomes clearer and stronger. Such an enticement was big enough. Shi Yan was touched. His mind was in a flutter. However, while he was still dismayed, Jiang Ji's fantasy Upanishad suddenly appeared. Jiang Ge had been waiting for this chance for a long time. Seeing Shi Yan's confused eyes, he seized the moment and attacked. He activated the 1000 fantasy domain. Jiang Ge looked at him. Magical light shot out from his eyes. A gleam of confusion crossed Shi Yan's face. He couldn't differentiate illusions from reality. Jiang Ji's figures multiplied in his vision. Layers of water-like barriers suddenly disappeared. A beautiful figure appeared in his retinue. It's Xia Xian Yan. More people appeared unceasingly. Shi Jian, Yang Tian Emperor, Yang Mu, Yi Tian Emo. They all came, smiling as if they wanted to tell him something. Shi Yan was baffled. He felt betrayed. His god soul was tempted. He didn't realize that he was walking towards that group of people. Crack! His body immediately bumped into those layers of water ripples. He seemed to be bound and couldn't even wriggle. Shi Yan's face changed dramatically. At this moment, Shi Yan found that he was standing next to a towering pillar under the palace. Layers of barriers tied him. His god soul was restrained. Chaotic energies gathered. The magical barriers revived and started to affect him. Jiang Ge suddenly smiled. Shi Yan, you're still a tender sprout. I'm too familiar with this place. Should I be so kind to bring you here? Bound with so many layers, Shiryen was enraged, but he had no solution. The barriers were subtle and magical that acted like countless ropes tightening around his body. He couldn't wiggle out of them. He kept thinking of ways to escape as Shiryen contacted the sky-breaking shuttle. How can I get rid of it? Your power is insufficient. What? The barriers in this place are all strong and marvelous. Even if I take all of your energy, I can't break them. Unless you know the method or reach the peak of King God Realm, you won't be able to do it. I don't know the realm of the person who built the barriers, but the wonderful features of this place are beyond my imagination. My maker was just a sacred-grade blacksmith. His realm wasn't enough to make me a higher-grade treasure, so... Shiryen grimaced. This is the first time the sky-breaking shuttle failed him completely. He thought there was no barrier that the sky-breaking shuttle couldn't break in this world. But today, he found that he was wrong. He had underestimated the might of the Dark Firmament Divine Nation's Imperial Master. You shouldn't be outraged. In fact, I don't have any bad intentions. If you can break the mysteries of the barriers while you are in here, not only can you escape, but you will be able to get in the palace. Then, you will know the secret that I couldn't figure out even after spending more than 200 years here. Jiang Ge beamed a faint smile. The cube stone in his hand glistened. A tender beam of light like a feather fell on Shiryan's waist and took his purgatory token. Haha, I tell you this. I have no grudges against Ao Gu Duo. He did put me in this damn place, but it was because I wanted to get here. My purpose was to enter the extreme purgatory field. Shiryen could only stare at the man taking his purgatory token away. He had no solutions and he just remained silent, his eyes cold and dark. Jiang Ji's face darkened and became sinister. That year, I was at only the Sky Realm. My whole family was massacred. My wife was raped in front of me. I must survive to take revenge. But my archenemy was too strong. I wasn't his match. Living was hard for me at that time, too. Although the Raging Flame Star area is vast, I can't find enough shelter. But the extreme purgatory field was just the place that I needed. My hands are soaked in blood. I've killed many to make Ao Gu Duo jail me in the extreme purgatory field. Staying here, I can avoid my enemy's pursuit. Also, I can have a better place to cultivate and increase my realm. That is why I've stayed idle here for 250 years. From the Sky Realm, I've reached the third sky of King God Realm. I've sacrificed a lot for my revenge. His face distorted savagely while talking. Finally, today, I gain the force for my revenge. Since you have only the first sky of King God Realm cultivation base and Aogera is at the second sky of King God Realm, I don't see how you will have a chance to kill him if he also has help from others. I don't want to make this bet either. If I can have the purgatory token from you, why would I take a risk? Jiang Ge gradually pulled himself together. You don't need to hate me. I still think this is just an exchange between us. I told you the secrets that I kept for years. If you can break the barriers and get into the palace, perhaps you will have the luck that I can't imagine. If I didn't want to leave so badly, I wouldn't do this to you. I would stay here like the other four until I found the secrets of this place. I'm now giving this honor to you. You should thank me. You're still young. You still have time to play. I'm so sorry I can't stay here with you. Enjoy. I need to get out of here. Jiang Ge rubbed his chin. After another year, the extreme purgatory field's training will end. I will leave first. If we meet again, I will make up for your loss today. And yeah, I have to remind you that the other four aren't easy to talk to like I am. If you meet them, you have to be careful. They are the true villains of the Raging Flame Star area. They are very patient and are all at the third sky of King God Realm. After so many years studying this place, the five of us have found that if one of the 5 palaces is broken, the others would change accordingly. Solve this mystery yourself. After Jiang Ge finished, he laughed evilly before leaving. He passed by the small cottage, roasted some fish, ate them, then picked some stuff. He left with satisfaction. After 1 hour, Jiang Ge appeared from the forbidden place. Yalin and Tai Mu were waiting outside. Seeing him, they were startled. They immediately got on guard, preparing for Jiang Ji's sudden attack. Jiang Ge looked at them who looked like they were encountering the archenemy. He laughed. Don't be so tense. I won't risk my life fighting you. I got what I want. He shook Shiryan's purgatory token. Taimu was shaken, shouting, Where's Shiryan? Dead, of course. Jianggu laughed louder. He didn't treasure his life. He shouldn't have broken into the prohibited area. The barriers there had torn him into pieces. I didn't need to move my finger to receive this piece of purgatory token. So wonderful, right? Taimu and Yalan grimaced listening to him. They tensed up. I told you, I just need a purgatory token. If you don't want to get into more trouble, don't act rashly. Jianggu didn't bother with Taimu and Yalan. He left quietly and hurriedly as if he had something to finish. Yalan and Taimu looked helplessly at the man leaving. They didn't dare act recklessly. Jianggu had the third sky of King God Realm cultivation base, and his 1000 fantasy domain had affected them directly. Yalan and Taimu understood that without Shiryan, they wouldn't be able to fight the old man. The two contemplated for a while, their eyes gazing at the forbidden area. After a while, they sighed. Too bad. Shiryan was quite the character. I have never seen anyone that excellent at the first sky of King God Realm. If he survived, he would have been the most dazzling star of the divine nation, Yalan said with emotions. Taimu nodded heavily. He was too reckless. He didn't listen to us. If he didn't go inside there, that freaky, old man wouldn't have done anything to him. If we went together, that man wouldn't have been able to attack us. Sigh. I didn't expect things to turn out like this. Forget it. He chose his path. We had no choice. Yalan shook her head with regret. We should go. We still have a mission to finish. We should accomplish our task before saying more. Taimu agreed. He glared at the prohibited land for the last time before leaving. They didn't know that Shiryan was still alive inside. After Jianggu left Yalan and Taimu, he wandered aimlessly, leaving no shadow. Aogu Duo and the others outside couldn't see him. His cube stone had concealed him from the purgatory token sensing and the people using the lake to watch what was happening inside the extreme purgatory field. Jianggu moved discreetly in the extreme purgatory field. He visited 4 other places, the 4 forbidden lands. He and the other 4 had made an appointment. He told the others that he couldn't stay here any longer and that he must leave. A boy had replaced him. He would finish what Jianggu couldn't. Moving between the 4 forbidden lands took him half a year. Participants in the extreme purgatory field were still killing and chasing prisoners and bloodthirsty villains. No one had met Shiryan. Aogu Duo, Leona, Du Tianji, and Ziyao in the Dark Firmament Star couldn't use the magical mirror created by the former Imperial Master to spot Shiryan in the extreme purgatory field. That forbidden land was able to avoid all kinds of sensing abilities. Everyone thought Shiryan was dead. Time flies fast. Soon, the training in the extreme purgatory field had come to an end. The term of 3 years was about to end. Aogera didn't see Shiryan. The battle that everyone had been waiting for didn't take place. When the magical effects of the extreme purgatory field vanished, Du Tianlu and the 5 great feudal vassals cooperated in checking the battlefields. The lucky prisoners and villains who survived were jailed again. Du Tianlu faced the sky and shouted to call for the participants. Gradually, they came one by one. But Shiryan had never shown up. Leona waited in silence. Her face gradually darkened. Chapter 792, Calm Down and Break the Barriers. Chapter 792, Calm Down and Break the Barriers. Aogera, Demeng, Yalan, and Taimu gathered as Du Tianlu were calling for them. Shiryan hadn't come up yet. Leona continued to grimace. After a while, almost all the participants gathered, but Shiryan was still not present. Aogu Duo suddenly smiled. Leona, will you uphold our bet? Rochester, Carthu, and Delay also peeked at Leona with strange looks. Rochester and Delay seemed to take pleasure in her misfortune. Sigh. I thought that Shiryan would win. I didn't expect that he would die in there. Big mistake. I wanted to wait until he got out of there and flatter the new star of the divine nation. This is so unfortunate. Rochester shook his head in disappointment and regret. If Shiryan is dead, someone else should have the purgatory token. Leona snorted, glaring at Aogu Duo, who was content with his triumph. If he dies, I'll give you a life star, of course. Good. Aogu Duo laughed. While they were talking, Du Tianji in the faraway dark firmament pondered for a while and then said, "Let's go." Ziyao's face was gloomy. Grief sparkled in her beautiful eyes. She got up quietly. Du Tianji touched the bright mirror in front of them. Divine light radiated gloriously. A slit appeared at the center of the mirror. The king and Ziyao disappeared into the slit. In the place where they could see the lake of the extreme purgatory field, Du Tianji and Ziyao reappeared. After he identified which way to go, Du Tianji brought Ziyao through several thousand miles and showed up at the place where the 5 feudal vassals gathering with just a single thought. Your Majesty. Including Du Tianlu, the 5 feudal vassals kneeled down on one knee, greeting him with respect. The contestants, including Aogera, kneeled down on both knees, bending their heads over to show their humble admiration and respect to the king. Get up, Du Tianji nodded, his bearings calm and natural. Who is the winner? Lika. Du Tianlu pointed at the first female warrior under Leona's commands. She killed the most. Du Tianji smiled. Our divine nation's luck. A fantasy sky ring flew out from his finger toward Lika. 5 creators' divine pellets for you to use when you break through to the original god realm. It has the best efficacy that will give you endless torrential soul energy. A suit of level 4 divine grade armor. It can fuse perfectly with your god body to increase your fighting abilities. Lika was thrilled, and she received the fantasy sky ring. She kept saying thanks. Thank you for your grace, your majesty. I will dedicate my life to the divine nation until I die. You don't need to give thanks. You've earned them. Du Tianji smiled. His line of sight shifted to Du Tianlu. We'll seal the extreme purgatory field shortly. The training in the extreme purgatory field ends now. We are still missing one person, answered Du Tianlu. He's here. Du Tianji turned around, looking behind them. Get out. You got the purgatory token, so you're exempt from all charges. From now on, you can go anywhere you want in this vast space. You're free. Leona and Aogu Duo all turned around to look. Jiang Ge showed himself, his face calm. He kneeled down. Thank you for your grace, your majesty. You killed Shiryan? Ziyao shouted in a hoarse voice, her face ferocious. Cold light sparkled in her beautiful eyes, which could scare people. Leona also snorted. Her dark green eyes were like those of a serpent. She also made people tremble. Jiang Ge discolored. Not me. I didn't kill him. He entered a forbidden area and the energy there tore him into pieces. I just picked up his purgatory token. Forbidden land? Du Tianji frowned, but he didn't chase further. He waved his hand, not waiting for Leona or Ziyao to ask the man more questions. Hand back the purgatory token and leave now. From now, you're free from your prior crimes. Jiang Ge didn't say anything else. He left the purgatory token on the ground, thanked Du Tianji, before soaring up into the sky. As though he was afraid of the other's words, he disappeared instantly. Leona and Ziyao gazed at him with hatred and resentment. Aogera smiled brightly, walking towards Ziyao. He bent his body. Your Highness, are you all right? Ziyao looked at the smiling face of Aogera, whose look never changed. She didn't know why she felt so irritated. Anyway, Aogera was her subordinate and he had been following her for years. He had given up everything for her. She had no reason to trouble him. She nodded and said, I'm okay. Shiryan saved me. I just don't feel well when he faced such an unexpected ending. Shiryan had joined hands with bloody slaughterer Katua to kill you, your highness. He didn't deserve your worries. Aogera said seriously. Ziya's face got colder. I don't care what the others said. He saved me in this solar star exploding fragment field. There might have been something between him and Katua. But he was never his partner, she said resolutely. If you say this is true, then it is true. I believe you, your highness. The smile on Aogera was forced. He was astounded for a while. In his eyes, Shiryan was dead. There was no need to push it further. Leona, when will you pay for our bet? Aogu Duo smiled. He felt so good. After we leave the Purgatory Star, You send your men to my territory, I will hand you a life star. Leona's face grimaced. She snorted with icy, cold eyes. Everything is over. Do what you need to do. You don't need to stay in Purgatory Star anymore. Du Tianji advised faintly before nodding to Leona. Come to Dark Firmament Star with me. I have something to discuss with you. Yes, nodded Leona. You and Aogera return to Glorious Amethyst Star and prepare. You'll depart to the 9-star Chamber of Commerce soon to meet Old Fan and carry the task I've given you. Du Tianji looked at Ziyao. Ziyao nodded quietly. She felt a little bit lost. Father, I want to stay in Purgatory Star for a few days before I go. Okay, as long as you understand it. Although Shi Yan was your excellent subordinate, he is dead. Don't dwell on it for too long. The Divine Nation has many important matters now. Don't get distracted for too long. Du Tianji arranged things and then nodded to Leona. They left through the lake to return to Dark Firmament Star. Shortly after, the 4 feudal vassals Aogu Duo, Rochester, Carthu, and Delay adjusted their delegations and departed. They seemed to have a more important business, so they didn't linger here. Du Tianlu sealed all the gates of the Extreme Purgatory Field. He also strengthened the prisons of the Extreme Purgatory Field to ensure nothing unexpected would happen. Then, he left. Ziyao stayed in the Purgatory Star for 7 days. She checked all the exits of the Extreme Purgatory Field as if she was waiting for someone or something. She didn't let Aogera come with her. She wandered around the Extreme Purgatory Field alone. During the 7 days, she didn't find anything. Her face became darker and her mood got gloomier day after day. No miracle happened. After 7 days, Ziyao left with grief and bitterness. She departed from the Purgatory Star begrudgingly. She didn't know that one of the seal exits she had passed by was very close to where Shi Yan was blocked. It was so close to Shi Yan that she just needed to dash for a bit to see him. However, the Forbidden Land had blocked all of sensing for living beings inside. She couldn't sense Shi Yan's living energy. Eventually, she had to leave the Purgatory Star with deep regret. Time flew quickly. The Purgatory Star resumed its calmness. Experts all left. The Extreme Purgatory Field was sealed. This land returned to be a quiet place. 94 out of 99 prohibited areas had disappeared. The 5 forbidden lands with magical effects still existed. Shi Yan stayed in the deepest place of his valley, inching through layers of barriers with great efforts. That grand palace hid in the deepest place of the Forbidden Land under the shade of a tall mountain. Thick clouds concealed it. No one could see anything through that layer of clouds. He came closer to a towering, massive pillar. 2 years had passed. During 2 years, he was always trying to decipher the subtle mysteries of the barriers. There were 49 layers of barrier covering the palace. At this point in time, he had broken 20 layers. Each layer was a magnificent formation, which hid the great mysteries of earth and heaven. The reason why Jianga couldn't break those barriers through his 250 years staying here was that he wasn't a blacksmith, which had limited his abilities. With his King God Realm cultivation base, he had to use the soul consciousness to discover that subtle formation. Of course, his progress was too slow. Shi Yan was different. He had a natural advantage. He had the experience of studying magical formations in the blacksmith's secrets of success. He had gained an unimaginable amount of experience and wealth. A layer of barrier consisted of many smaller formations. Although it was magically complex, a divine-grade blacksmith with wholehearted dedication could still break it. Even it wasn't fast, he could still make progress. If Jianggu had known that Shi Yan at the King God Realm had such tremendous forces and that he was also a divine-grade blacksmith, he wouldn't have used those barriers to bind him. After deciphering each layer, his understanding of blacksmithing would reach a new height. The formations that built the barriers all hid the magical truth of nature. During this time, his realm was refined and strengthened, and his soul was sublimated. His sensing of natural powers became much more sensitive in this place. While he focused on breaking the barriers, the benefits it brought to his realm was hard to estimate. Whenever a layer was broken, his realm would be refined one level. This also benefited his soul altar. While Shi Yan didn't notice it, His three powers Upanishad had a subtle change when he attempted to comprehend the mysteries of earth and energy inside those barriers. He had forgotten Jiang Ji's trap. Now he had just sunk into his work of deciphering barriers, which were one of the most magical journeys of his martial path. His mind changed as he had developed advantages. His work speed accelerated. Today, he had broken through the 42nd layer out of 49 layers. He suddenly felt a marvelous commotion from inside the palace. At the same time, the other 4/3 sky of King God realm warriors in the other 4 forbidden areas of the extreme purgatory field, who were doing the same thing with him, all witnessed a strange occurrence. They were all shaken. Chapter 793. Meet up in Precincts. Chapter 793. Meet up in Precincts. After Jiang Gu left the Purgatory Star, he dashed furiously in the general direction of the 9-star Chamber of Commerce. He didn't have a war chariot or a battleship, so he flew by himself at the fastest possible speed that a 3rd sky of King God Realm Warrior could travel at. After 3 months, he flew past the star area near the Dark Firmament Star. Every time he exhausted his energy, Jiang Gu would find a place to rest and use the divine crystals to recovery. Then, he would continue moving. Today, when he consumed a lot of his energy, he found an abandoned mineral star. That mineral star was almost empty. It had caves of various sizes. From a distance, it looked like a giant hornet hive. Its energy was exhausted a long time ago. No pieces of ore remained. Jiang Gu beamed a faint smile. His body descended like a shadow on the mineral star. 10 medium-quality divine crystals flew out from his fantasy sky ring. As he sat down to absorb the crystals, he discolored in fright. The darkness covered him like a dome of the sky. There wasn't a beam of light in that darkness. He couldn't even see his own fingers. It was like a prison that made his soul decay. Jiang Gu was shaken. He was frightened, looking here and there, but he couldn't see anything. His heart sank to the bottom of an abyss. He was astounded, and it took him a while for him to react. He kneeled down anxiously and said with respect, "Greetings, Madame Leona." The Raging Flame Star Arena had so many powers Upanishad, and some of them were so famous that everyone knew. The Absolute Dark Upanishad was the flagship of the leader of the 5 feudal vassals, Leona. No one else possessed this power. As the endless darkness engulfed Jiang Gu, he was initially bewildered, but then he immediately knew whom he was encountering. The Bloody Butcher of the Divine Nation, commander of the Bloody Legion, head of the 5 brutal devils, Madame Leona. Jiang Gu had no intention of resisting. He kneeled down on one knee and slightly stooped his head. "I wonder why Madame Leona has humbled her good self to visit this place. What are my orders?" A faint light was revealed silently. A woman looked as sinister and cold as ghosts that sat on the stone ground by a cave that ran deep into the ground. She squinted and said calmly, "You have 2 options." Jiang Gu stooped lower with a serious face. "I am listening. 1. I will kill you, destroy your soul altar, and detain your god soul. Then, I will use my secret techniques to take your memories." Leona's voice was indifferent, as if she was talking about something that had no relation to her. "I wish to know the other option." Jiang Gu was in fear, his voice even trembling. "Madame Leona, I want to live. Please give me a chance. Tell me all things you saw in the forbidden place related to Shurian in details. Of course, you can choose to lie if you think you can deceive me." Leona was nonchalant, as though she didn't care about his killing him. She didn't show her intention of killing him. Her calmness scared her victims out of their wits. Jiang Gu lifted his head up and his body shivered. He didn't hesitate and answered immediately. "He is not dead. He's constrained in the forbidden place by the barriers. I took the purgatory token from him, but I didn't harm him. There's a palace inside that forbidden place which has 49 layers of barriers. It should be built by the former imperial masters of the divine nation to conceal an unknowable secret, perhaps." He knew he had only one chance in front of Leona. If he lied, this infamous woman would never give him a bit of her mercy. Thus, Jiang Gu didn't have the nerves to lie. He didn't even dare pause in his narration, as he was afraid that she would think that he was taking time to fabricate his story. Leona listened to him silently without interrupting him. Until Jiang Ge finished, she remained in thought. Jiang Ge slightly lifted his head up, looking at her anxiously. He didn't dare make a small move, just waiting for Leona's final decision. He understood how brutal and cruel this woman was. All stories about this woman were related to bloody massacres. He knew her realm, which was enough to erase him easily. No one would ever know he was buried or torn into pieces on this damn planet. Thus, he didn't dare move or talk rashly. He just waited like that. You can go. After a while, Leona waved to dismiss him as though she was waving a fly away. Remember, I've never seen you and you've never seen me here. I will remember your kindness for the rest of my life. Jiang Ge threw his hand into the air and swore. He watched her. Seeing her have no other commotions, he fearfully backed off little by little. As soon as he got out of Leona's dark domain, he ran like crazy and didn't dare stop, even just for a second. Leona stood up in the dark. Her dark green eyes shot toward the direction of the purgatory star for a long time. Then, she snorted, "That little brat made me lose a life star. I'll remember this debt." The absolute darkness drifted like a dark cloud into the immense starry area. It flashed, swayed, then went invisible. The emptied mineral star resumed its quietness. The prohibited area, sealed extreme purgatory field, purgatory star. Yan was staying in the middle of rippling water-like barriers, gawking at the grand palace that was almost within his reach. A magical energy fluctuation sent out from a deep place inside that palace. Just like the change of seasons, the palace seemed to continue operating now. Strange and grumbling explosions echoed from the ground under the forbidden land where he was suspended in the air. The same changes also happened in the other forbidden areas. For third sky of King God realm warriors were also confined in the barriers like Yan. They lifted their heads looking at the palace and feeling the energy waves sending out from inside. The 5 forbidden areas in the extreme purgatory field slowly moved and adjoined with each other in a way no one could ever imagine or have a chance to witness. Although they looked slow, they were actually moving very fast. Within 15 minutes, the 5 forbidden areas situated in 5 different regions of the extreme purgatory field had magically fused into one intact piece. Even the 5 wonderful palaces appeared as one place under some mysterious force. Immediately, Yan saw not only 1 but 5 palaces. The 5 palaces looked like 5 radiantly dazzling massive pieces of a jewel. With the support of the towering stone pillar, they moved up to the sky over their heads. The 5 grand palaces arrayed a pentagon in the air. Like Yan, the other 4 were staying near their palaces and facing the sky with a look of astonishment. The other 4 didn't have Yan's progress. After so many years, they had only broken through 23 layers. Yan was more productive. Ah! The surprised voices of the 4 arose from 4 different corners. They all gazed at Yan. Yan stayed in his barriers and tilted his head, looking at the other 4. A gleam of surprise sparkled in his eyes. The 4 of them were at the third sky of King God realm, 3 males and 1 female. The 3 male warriors were all the old man with disheveled hair and dirty clothes. They looked like they hadn't cleaned their bodies for years. All of them looked helter-skelter, their eyes hiding brutal and malevolent intentions. The only woman looked in her 30s. She was beautiful, wearing a snakeskin-like leather robe at knee length, revealing her jade-like calves. That woman wasn't human. She belonged to the Ghostmark clan. Delicate cyan tattoos were shown on her exposed white skin arms and legs, which gave her a perfectly beautiful look, charming, but also evil. In her 30s, she was the flower at its most beautiful blooming time. Subtly, fine azure patterns were drawn on her delicate neck. She had 2 exquisite jade earrings dangling on her earlobes, which created the ding-dang sounds when she moved. Her beautiful eyes were like a deep sea that people could never measure. She eyed Yan from a far distance with a beam in her eyes that signaled how she felt uneasy. Her eyebrows arched as she gave an inaudible snort. When the other 4 were watching him, Yan also observed them. Not long afterward, he looked sterner. Just like Jiang Ge, they were all at the third sky of King God realm. They were the death-sentenced inmates of the extreme purgatory field. Their hands were soaked in blood. They were not good people. Kid, are you the person Jianga mentioned? You've replaced him. An old man as thin as a bamboo stick that looked like a skeleton with human skin cover asked. His eyes sparkled with gloomy light. Seems like you are much faster than us. What did you do to combine all the forbidden places into one piece? The other three observed him, their eyes hiding their ferocious thoughts. Yeah, Jianga trapped me, making me sink in here. Shiryen frowned before continuing. He left, I guess. Since then I've been breaking these barriers. Until now, I've deactivated 42 barriers. At the moment the last barrier was broken, the palace I saw suddenly changed, which brought us all here. Yeah, I think it's the special effect of the Forbidden Lands. This wasn't my intention. Feng Rao, what do you think? The man who talked to him first pondered before turning to look at the woman who had strange and exquisite drawings on her body. The other two old men also looked at the Ghostmark clan woman named Feng Rao. It seemed like she was their leader. Of course, this is good. Feng Rao cracked a strange smile. Light sparkled from her eyes. We four have spent a lot of time just to break around 20 layers. Jianggu was the worst. He had been holding us back. He left and arranged a good boy who could surpass us in just a short time. Aren't we lucky? Then, the other three acted oddly. Those old men didn't look like good people. They burst out laughing bizarrely as if they all agreed with her. We've been patient for a long time just to find what was inside the palaces. This kid accelerated our progress. It is all good for us. Feng Rao smiled. Didn't you see that the barriers are loosening a bit? Of course, we did. The three old men cracked strange smiles. Shiryan's face darkened as he had a bad premonition. These four people were too relaxed and nonchalant. If their desire of knowing the secrets of this place was too much, they must have planned something. Chapter 794, A Dark Enchainment. Chapter 794, A Dark Enchainment. These four seemed to be different from Jianggu. Although Jianggu was curious to know the secrets of the palace, he was too far from the level of the other four. He wouldn't let those secrets keep him here like the others who would never leave until they reached the palaces. Good, very good. With this kid, our progress will be much faster. The skinny man bared his teeth, smiling disgustingly. Then it's all right. Our purpose is to understand the secrets of those palaces. I heard they were built by the 5 former imperial masters of the Dark Firmament Divine Nation. They hide an earth-shaking secret. I haven't gotten out of this place because of it. Feng Rao glared at the other three. You guys are curious, too, perhaps? The three old men nodded simultaneously. Kid, what's your name? Asked Feng Rao. Shiryen. Okay, Shiryen. Since Jianggu transferred his responsibility to you, you shall replace him then. Not bad. Just do what you were doing. Break the rest of the barriers. Feng Rao assigned him this task naturally as if it was obvious. Shiryen frowned, contemplated for a while and then left. He stopped moving inside the barrier. The three old men darkened their faces. Why did you laugh? Feng Rao's arched eyebrows rose. Her slender face outlined her bright eyes, which were sparkling with deep and strange light. Aren't you interested in it? Of course I am. Shiryen shook his head many times faintly. But I don't want to be dim-sighted. I want to know why you guys want to get in there. You guys aren't like Jianggu. Jianggu didn't know what was in the palaces. I think you guys know something. Yeah, maybe. You weren't forced to be jailed in the extreme purgatory field. Right? The other four frowned. I think you came to the extreme purgatory field on your own, with the goal to seek these forbidden areas. Am I right? Shiryen smiled coldly. The other four quieted down. Feng Rao pondered for a while then probed. Do you know something, too? Shiryen could feel something here, but he was still calm. Yeah, I'm like you guys. I came here for this special place. I let Jianggu trap me here. It was exactly what I wanted. What you know, I also know. Haha. I just want to confirm. Do you have the jade token? It wasn't easy to deceive Feng Rao. She snorted. Each of the 5 of us has a jade token? Jianggu kept one. If you don't have the jade token, how did you know it? I don't have the jade token, Shiryen shook his head. But the one Jiangge had comes from my family. My family had kept it for a long time. After my family has declined, the jade token had been passed through many people before Jiangge got it. Jiangge has the jade token, but he didn't know the real secret of it. I'm here with the same goal as you guys. Yan had racked his brain to fabricate those lies. He thought it could work. Indeed, Feng Rao's group changed their facial expressions listening to him. They seemed to buy it. No wonder why Jiangge wasn't so patient. He doesn't know much. The bony old man had his eyes flared as he nodded discreetly. If we have the same goal, we don't have much time to talk. The secret of those palaces can change the structure of the Raging Flames star area. People, do your best. Feng Rao also nodded. Kid, our priority is to remove the barriers. Your fast speed helps loosen the barrier in our place too. If we continue this way, we can get in there soon. Wait until we break the barriers outside the palace. Then, we will talk. The other three nodded. Yan pondered for a while. He didn't continue to quarrel with them. He got the conclusion he wanted. Feng Rao's team came to the extreme purgatory field because of the Forbidden Lands. There was no doubt about it. Their imprisonment in the purgatory star was just their trick. Those 4 people were at the third sky of King God Realm. They were all cruel and malignant. With their abilities, it wasn't too difficult to kill a participant to take the ticket outside. They lingered here for something. A secret that could restructure the Raging Flames star area. Yan was interested in it all of a sudden. He focused on breaking the left 7 layers. After breaking 1 layer, he would take a rest and talk with the other 4. Through some conversations, he knew that Feng Rao came from the land of God Punishment, the most chaotic place of the entire Raging Flames star area. Her status wasn't ordinary. The skeleton-like old man was called Ganji, was a warrior of the 9-star Chamber of Commerce. The other 2 were named Pang Jia and Han Di. They were from the Underworld League. None of them came from the Dark Firmament Divine Nation, which surprised him. With the same goal, the atmosphere between them seemed to be harmonious without any dispute while the barriers were not yet lifted. As Yan had progressed fast, the breaking speed of the other 4 became faster accordingly. Soon, there was only 1 barrier in front of Yan. At this moment, Feng Rao said, "We can take a rest." Yan stayed in the water-like barrier and stopped his work. He floated in so many ripples, his face calm. Although he was surprised, he didn't outwardly express it. Wait until they reach the last layer. We will join hands and tear the barrier at the same time to enter the palace. Feng Rao looked at him. Some of the layers in our places still remain. If you break it now, something will change accordingly in our places. At that time, perhaps we can't open the 5 palaces at the same time, and we won't receive anything from it. Ganji, Pang Jia, and Han Di nodded. Yan didn't know what Feng Rao said was true or not. However, he wouldn't take risks as he didn't know what hid in those palaces. If he broke into there alone, he could possibly encounter something dangerous. Thus, Yan stopped his work, bobbing in the water-like layer. He closed his eyes to comprehend what he had collected during this time of breaking barriers. Yan was studying the subtle mysteries of magical formations that made these barriers. Every magical formation contained different truths of nature. The way to decipher the formation was to follow the trace of its energy using his knowledge of formation and barriers and the soul consciousness to solve it. During this process, Yan gained a deeper perception of other powers in the world. Although he didn't aim to dig his 3 powers Upanishad further, he still got something naturally. Yan stayed quiet and took out the divine crystals to restore his energy. He calmed down his mind to learn the specialties of his powers and didn't bother with the other 3, who were still struggling breaking their barriers. Time flew fast. A long time had passed. Today, Feng Rao was the first one who had reached the final layer. She exhaled and glared at Yan, who was meditating. She didn't say anything but took out the divine crystals to restore her power. A long time afterward, the other 3 also reached the final layer. Their faces brightened up as they were very excited. Just like Yan and Feng Rao, the other 3 didn't hasten to break the final layer. They quietly used the divine crystals to recover their powers to the peak. Yan had restored his powers. He observed them discreetly. His face gradually darkened. He saw their cautiousness. It was obvious that they were so excited, but they all controlled and recovered their powers to the peak. Their intentions were clear to Shiryen. They all knew they had to use all of the forces in the next moment. Perhaps after they had broken the final layer, the harmonious relationship between them would be demolished forever without any chance to cooperate again. He understood that once all the barriers were broken, entering the palaces would trigger the big fight against these people. Since he had only the first sky of King God Realm cultivation base, among the 5 of them, he was the weakest. Shiryen knitted his brows tightly. Although Ganji, Pangjia, and Handi are all at the 3rd sky of King God Realm, Handi's the weakest. His time in the King God Realm wasn't for too long. Suddenly, a wisp of soul consciousness that was hard to detect sneaked through the broken layers to Shiryen from Feng Rao's. The eccentric ghost-marked clan woman stooped and opened her eyes to look at him. At this moment, Ganji, Pangjia, and Handi were still restoring their power. They seemed not to recognize Feng Rao's move. You shouldn't reply with soul consciousness. Your realm's low. If you release your soul energy, they can sense you immediately. Feng Rao's thought continued to reach him. You just need to listen to me. At the moment the barriers shatter altogether when we enter the palace, we will have an unavoidable battle. Since your realm's the lowest, I don't know how you got in there, but when we engage in a battle, you will inevitably die first. I have a suggestion. Once we get in there, the other 3 will launch attacks immediately. We will join hands. You'll help me to hold Handi back for a while. You don't need to join the battle. Just stay outside. You shouldn't hurry because of the things in the palace. Even though Handi's the weakest among us, he is not someone you can deal with easily. When I say hold him back, deal with him with a tool which you can pour your energy into that I will give you. You don't need to bother with Ganji and Pangjia. If I win something, I won't forget your part. If you agree, you should give me a slight nod. Shiryen squinted, observing her for a long time. Then he slightly nodded. Feng Rao parted her lips, forming a smile. Her eyes glistened. Next, she told him how to use the tool. Among these 4 people, Feng Rao seemed to have the most exquisite cultivation base. Her understanding of Powers Upanishad was the most profound. That's why she didn't worry that the other 3 could hear her soul thoughts sending to Shiryen. Phew. Genji exhaled foul air. The divine crystal in his hand turned into dust and scattered. The old man now looked refreshed and sound. He glared at Feng Rao next to him. Suddenly, he stooped and smiled, his smile worth studying. He looked at Feng Rao then sneaked at Shiryen. A gleam of disdain flashed in his eyes. Apparently, he didn't consider Shiryen his equal opponent. Shortly, Pangjia and Handi woke up. When they looked at Feng Rao, they seemed to be afraid of her. However, when they shifted their looks to Shiryen, their fear disappeared. Obviously, just like Ganji, they deemed Shiryen nothing of a threat. Let's go! Feng Rao shouted. Shiryen stooped, placing his hands on the ultimate layer of the barrier. The other 4 also worked on their last barrier breaking. Chapter 795, Small Character, Big Effect. Chapter 795, Small Character, Big Effect. Shiryen extended his hands, touching the barrier which had a wooden texture. Those magical wood textures connected each other. They were green-brown that looked more like a thick forest. An aura of forest diffused from this barrier. Closing his eyes, Shiryen felt like he was walking deep into a luxurious forest. He could even smell the fresh smell of green trees and grass. He could feel the breath of nature. Countless wooden pieces fused with each other, creating a sea of lush plants. The essence chi of wood permeated everywhere thickly and vigorously. At the same time, the other 4 placed their hands on the barrier. From Feng Rao's direction, gold light emitted while red flame, white steam, and yellow earth chi gushed out from Ganji, Pangjia, and Handi's areas respectively. 5 elements forces. At first glance, Shiryen understood that this ultimate layer hid the mysteries of 5 elements. They seemed to connect with each other, too. The barriers of 5 elements, metal, wood, water, fire, and earth, could always fuse with each other magically. These last barriers interlinked between the palaces. They kept the subtle powers of balanced 5 elements. Once they broke this balance, something beyond their imagination would happen. Shuryen observed the wood texture for a while, but he didn't hasten. He closed his eyes and quieted his mind to feel the magical vitality of the wood texture. Shortly, a thought arose in his head. His mind flickered. The dead Upanishad was activated. The soul burial ground diffused, expanding next to him. It engulfed the luxurious forest created by those wood pieces. Wood energy emitted from those magical wood textures. Under the effects of the soul burial ground, this wood energy was absorbed gradually. The vigorous vitality was collected and gathered by Shuryen. His god body suddenly received the lively power which boosted his power. The subtle power of 5 elements turned into beams of pure energy entering his flesh and bones. This last barrier of wood power was dissolved easily under his special power Upanishad. At this speed, this last barrier would soon vanish. However, Feng Rao's group of 4 found themselves struggling. While they were breaking the barriers, their faces were grim. Sweat beaded their foreheads. They were focusing wholeheartedly, not daring to be distracted. The power in their god bodies was draining fast. Shuryen could solve his barrier easily, but it was troublesome for them. They were urging their energy madly. Light sparkled from time to time from their bodies as they poured energy into the barriers. They closed their eyes to sense the leaks of the barriers which they would fill with their energy. Those people didn't cultivate any power of the 5 elements. Shuryen couldn't guess it before they had released their god domain. However, he understood that their powers were almighty and ruthless. As long as they were persistent, when they wore out the energy of the barrier, they would finish it. While he was observing Feng Rao's group, his marvelous soul burial ground had absorbed almost all the wood energy of the last barrier. Seeing the last layer was about to be broken, Shuryen suddenly stopped his activity. His god domain disappeared. He relaxed and watched the other 4. Shuryen didn't hasten to tear the last layer of barriers. He didn't know what was in the 5 places or the dangers hiding in there. Thus, he didn't want to be the first one jump in there. As Feng Rao had reminded him, he stayed outside to see what would happen before he could decide his next moves. Shortly, Feng Rao's group had worn out the energy of the final barriers and broken them. Crack, crack. Clear echoes arose from the other 4's areas. Light dots of 4 colors scattered. For shadows dashed like meteors under beams of red light. They stormed towards the 5 palaces. Ganji was the fastest. He just swayed and appeared in a palace. Peng Jia and Han Di followed him closely. Feng Rao, the one people feared a lot, came last. While the other 3 dashed into the palace, Feng Rao paused, glaring at Shuryen. Abruptly, an azure ball covered in lightning was shot toward Shuryen. Shuryen was bewildered. He immediately tore off the last barrier. He urged essence chi on his palm and condensed them into fine beams like snakes. He caught the azure ball. This ball was small enough for him to hold it with one hand. However, it was much heavier than it looked. The ball was covered with some strange spikes. At first glance, it looked like a hedgehog curling its body with immense lightning on its spikes. After he had caught the ball, lightning power like ropes condensed and wound around his arm. Azure lightning strikes and his essence chi fused. As Shuryen's soul consciousness flickered like Feng Rao had told him, he used a strange technique to connect with an area inside that ball. Shortly, he had formed a connection with that small ball. Now he could control the ball. Just like driving the amethyst war chariot, he could manipulate the ball easily. Lightning strikes mixed with his essence chi, which helped him control the lightning power. Feng Rao threw him this toy to deal with Han Di. According to Feng Rao, Shuryen could use the lightning power in this thunderbolt ball to subdue Han Di. It could even disrupt Han Di's god domain. Holding the thunderbolt ball in his hand, Shuryen didn't hasten to leave or bother fighting Ganji, Peng Jia, and Han Di, which was taking place in the palace, just looking at Feng Rao from a distance. Feng Rao nodded to him. She said nothing afterward. Her figure faded immediately. In the next moment, she appeared near Ganji, Peng Jia, and Han Di. As soon as she appeared, she instantly attacked Ganji. The god domain of these 4 emerged in one palace. At this moment, Shuryen finally knew which powers Upanishad each of them cultivated. Ganji's power was gravity. In his affected area, blocks of stone that built up the palace were shaken as if they were about to collapse. In his divine gravitational field, the gravity was increased several hundred times. Besides him, no one could be free of this special effect. Pangjia's power Upanishad could make his body stretch or contract at will. When he performed his god domain, his fingers could extend or shorten easily like a monster. His bones would be like the spiral spring that could be lengthened 10 times. This was one of the rarest power Upanishad that Shuryen had ever seen. Handi's power Upanishad was soul-dragging. Inside his god domain, shadows of ghosts and demons moved back and forth. He could control them all. Anyone entered Handi's god domain would have his soul bound and be unable to control his body. Now Shuryen knew why Feng Rao had given him the Thunderbolt Ball. Handi's power could control ghosts and souls, which got scared witless from thunder and lightning. Thus, thunderbolts were the nemesis of his domain. The god domains of Ganji, Pangjia, and Handi were somehow odd. However, the oddest was Feng Rao's domain. Feng Rao's power Upanishad was sound. When her god domain was created, countless sadly grating and shrill voices reverberated. She shouted and her essence chi was poured into her god domain, creating more sharp noises that sounded like brutal blades. When Pangjia or Handi shot their energies into her strange domain, under her techniques and spells, their powers would be locked or burst off. They couldn't damage her. Shuryen didn't know the real origin of those four, but he was sure they have peculiar god domains. They were attacking each other in the palace as if they had seen a marvelous treasure in there. No one noticed Shuryen. Perhaps in their minds, Shuryen was just a small character with only the first sky of King God Realm cultivation base. He wouldn't be able to affect and change the situation of their battle. They decided to ignore him. Feng Rao had used a strange sound technique to subdue the other three. She shrilled. The ear-piercing voice and her energy became invisible spears crossing the space, aiming at Ganji, Pangjia, and Handi. Only Handi's peculiar power Upanishad could trouble her. Since Handi could use the magical power of Soul Upanishad, he could make countless ghosts and evils came forth to create shields from the sharp sound spears. He didn't struggle much. Sound has no weight. That's why Ganji's gravity power couldn't affect it. Those sound spears then wreaked havoc in his god domain. Ganji felt that his hands were tied, he couldn't do anything. Pangjia didn't have any solution. Even if he could make his hands longer, when the sound attacked him, he had to shrink his limbs instantly, resizing his god body 10 times smaller. Shuryen! All of a sudden, Feng Rao shouted while fighting 1-on-3. Shuryen got out of the barrier and walked to the palace. Hearing her call, he hesitated for a while before flinging the thunderbolt ball. Hundreds of azure lightning strikes moved like the electric eels toward Handi's god domain. His god domain felt each of blue lightning strike, and it burned many ghosts in there. Immense azure mist fumed. Handi's god domain was shattered under the coverage of the blue lightning. It couldn't perform at its best. Kid, you wish for death. Handi was enraged. As he hadn't prepared to counterattack, his god domain was disrupted. Feng Rao's maledictions had shot him badly. His god body now had many bleeding holes. He was outraged, looking at Shuryen with a flame of anger in his eyes. His god domain was damaged, making Feng Rao's power fiercer. Ganji and Pangjia were completely subdued. They had no solution to wiggle. Feng Rao was excited. While dealing with the other two, she distracted them for a while and went quickly towards an area inside the palace. A rainbow-like bunch of light like a ribbon shot out from her soft palm that flew directly to that area. A fragment that looked like a turtle shell was shielded by a magical formation placed in that area. Feng Rao's rainbow was shot there, smashing the formation. The fragment that looked like a turtle shell was about to fall into her hand. Shortly, a tremor was sent from the 5 palaces. From the other formations in the other 4 palaces, pieces of turtle shell flew out and gathered as if they were about to join and create something complete and extraordinary. Chapter 796, Hiding Incompetence by Keeping Quiet. Chapter 796, Hiding Incompetence by Keeping Quiet. The 5 pieces of turtle shell used to be split up, but now they were reunited, becoming one intact piece under some force. By the time the 5 pieces of turtle shell combined, a magical energy fluctuation bloomed fiercely from that shell. Feng Rao discolored as if she could feel something terrible. She didn't say anything but flew away in just a blink. Her figure swayed, and she had gone very far away from that turtle shell. Right at that moment, tens of thousands of 7-colored lights shot out from the shell, each of which was sharp enough to pierce through anything. The rays of light were denser near the turtle shell. They shot out everywhere and became more scattering. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Tens of thousands of rays shot out altogether. Handi wasn't so cautious. More than 10 beams of light pierced him. His god body revealed some spatial holes. Shortly after, Handi's god body was finished. Even his soul altar was pierced and exploded shortly. Ganji and Pang Jia could notice the danger. They flew away after Feng Rao. However, they couldn't dodge all the rays. Some lights had managed to prick their arms and waist that looked like the wounds caused by invisible swords. They were lucky that those lights didn't hit their weak points. Unlike poor Handi, they were still alive. They hastened to use pellets to stop the wounds from bleeding and grow flesh to seal the holes. Their intestines stayed in their tummy. The unharmed were Feng Rao, who fled first, and Shiryen, who was standing the furthest from the source of attacks. Shiryen was frightened since there was a scattering beam shot right next to him. Too close. If he hadn't listened to Feng Rao and went inside, he would have possibly gotten hit. The closer it was to the turtle shell, the thicker the beams of light were. They condensed and then expanded. The gaps between the beams enlarged when they shot out. Shiryen and Feng Rao had swayed between those gaps to dodge the fatal attacks. Tens of thousands of light beams bombarded thickly from the turtle shell before ceasing. In just a blink, condensed light covered the turtle shell while it was spinning in the area of the clear energy formation. Ganji and Pang Jia simply cured their wounds and gazed at Feng Rao with rage and hatred. Bitch! Well done. These two had moved to stay in the gaps between the light beams. They didn't get hurt, but they were pale. Apparently, they got hurt severely. You and I are the same. If you haven't hastened to attack me, we wouldn't have caused the reunion of the 5 pieces of the turtle shell. Everything wouldn't have turned this way. I can only say that you deserve it. Feng Rao beamed a faint smile, not showing that she was weaker. Well, if we haven't hindered you, would you have taken all the good things? Wouldn't that be ideal for you, eh? If you were a nice person, why wouldn't you spare some good things for us? Ganji was outraged. His eyes were cold and sinister as he was angry. Pang Jia sneered, looking at Feng Rao before glaring at Shiryen. Bitch, you're good at calculating. You decided to cooperate with that kid and made him hold back Handi, which made his god domain ineffective. You're so cunning and malignant. Well, the 3 of you have soon planned to fake your first fight and wait until I got into your trap. You wanted to kill me, the strongest, first. Did you think that I wouldn't know your scheme? Feng Rao arched her brows and snorted. You can plan to attack me, but I'm not allowed to counterattack. Shiryen was surprised listening to their conversation. He felt grim. None of them were nice. All had bad intentions. Ganji, Pang Jia, and Handi all knew that Feng Rao was the toughest to deal with. They had a perfect plan that they would pretend to fight against each other to entice Feng Rao. The 3 of them would join hands and kill Feng Rao first. Then, they would check out the treasures of this place. Anyway, Feng Rao had predicted their scheme. She wasn't fooled, so she decided to join hands with Shiryen to hold back Handi, preventing him from utilizing his energy to the utmost. She was afraid of Handi's power the most. Thus, the cunning plan of Ganji, Pang Jia, and Handi was ineffective. Feng Rao, in an opposite situation, had gained the upper hand and suppressed Ganji and Pang Jia. She almost got the piece of turtle shell first. Unfortunately, man proposes but God disposes. Even Feng Rao had a wrong calculation. The 5 pieces had reunited fast, leaving her no time to dodge the danger. Her plan failed. They're all old cunning foxes indeed. Shiryen became more cautious. While they were talking, he silently swayed between the gaps of the light beams to the position nearest to Handi's shattered body to absorb his thick essence chi. No one noticed this move of his. Handi was at the third sky of King God realm. Even though he was dead, the energy he had accumulated for so many years wouldn't vanish so quickly. When Shiryen came, the unowned essence chi beam seemed to find a new host. They discreetly congregated in his body. The whole life essence chi of a King God realm warrior was massive. Shiryen hated that Feng Rao, Ganji, and Peng Jia couldn't quarrel longer so that he would have time to harvest this marvelous energy. The 5 pieces of turtle shell have united. You know what to do now. Ganji gritted his teeth, looking at Feng Rao indignantly. It was a good business, but you guys have messed everything up. And now no one will get anything from this. You blame me? Feng Rao made a cold expression. Why do you blame me? Didn't you want to kill me and steal the treasures? All of you are no good. No one has the right to blame the other. After that, Ganji and Peng Jia quieted down. I have no idea what to do since the 5 pieces have united. All right, if you have any good solutions to get through those fatal beams to be close to the turtle shell, you can try. You can be sure that I won't attack you at this moment. Feng Rao pondered for a while. She was a little bit upset, though. She looked at the turtle shell while she wiped a flock of her long hair. Shiryen was standing 50 meters away from Handi's body, frowning and looking at that area. The 5 pieces of turtle shell were adjoined perfectly with each other. Halos supported the shell, lifted it up and spun it. Immense magical energy shot out unceasingly from it. No one wished to come close and touch it. Ganji and Peng Jia looked at the turtle shell greedily. Their eyes couldn't conceal their dark desire. However, although Feng Rao had said that, they didn't have any solution besides to stare and think. Feng Rao didn't answer. She hesitated for a while before moving towards Shiryen. Feeling Feng Rao coming close to him, Shiryen slightly knitted his brows. He accumulated his energy and put up his guard cautiously. Give it back to me. Handi's dead. You don't need it anymore. As she could feel Shiryen's vigilance, Feng Rao stopped walking, looking at him from a far distance. She beamed a faint smile and extended her jade-like arm. The exquisite azure tattoos seemed to be moving on her arm. Ganji and Peng Jia suddenly looked at Shiryen. Being astounded for a while, Ganji laughed evilly. Shiryen, the Thunderbolt Ball is a rank 2 divine grade treasure. The lightning and thunder power of this ball is very dense and dangerous. It feels very good to use it and is very effective. You're experienced, I suppose? Do you really want to give it back to her? If I were you and I received something, I would never return it, honestly. Peng Jia also laughed bizarrely. It's a rank 2 divine grade treasure. Very useful to enhance your power. You have the lowest realm among us. With that treasure, you will have more support. If you give it back to her, will you be any different from a fool? She used you. She should pay you, right? Ganji and Peng Jia took turns to give advice to Shiryen as they wanted to separate him and the woman. Feng Rao didn't say anything. She just beamed a faint smile and looked at him as if she was waiting for his decision. Shiryen also smiled, enjoying the thunderbolt ball in his hand. His smile became brighter. He had done something with that thunderbolt ball. He looked at Feng Rao and said nothing. You like it? Feng Rao parted her lips and smiled. Her eyebrows like the new moon arched slightly. If you like it, I can give it to you. However, I need it to do something. After that, I will give it to you. Okay. A gentleman won't take what the other likes. Keep your thunderbolt ball. Shiryen chuckled and flicked his fingers. The thunderbolt ball flew out, turning into a blue lightning strike that fell into Feng Rao's hand. Fool. Stupid. Ganji and Peng Jia snorted, their faces malevolent. He's smart. Feng Rao retrieved her thunderbolt ball. A bright smile appeared on her face. She glared at Ganji and Peng Jia then said, You are the stupid ones. You think your plan is good. Look what you've done now. Ganji and Peng Jia grimaced even more. Shiryen looked at Feng Rao seriously. When he saw that the woman didn't check the ball and instead put it into her fantasy sky ring right away, he beamed a sinister smile. Shiryen understood well that Feng Rao, Ganji, and Peng Jia were the same. She didn't care about him either. Otherwise, Feng Rao wouldn't have given him the Thunderbolt Ball to aid him in dealing with Han Di. She thought that Shi Yan's real abilities couldn't harm Han Di without the ball. And it was also the reason why Feng Rao had never thought that he could do something to her Thunderbolt Ball, which made her not check it. It was an instinctive disdain. A warrior at the third sky of King God Realm would naturally not put a warrior 2 skies lower than him in his eyes. It wasn't that they weren't careful, they just didn't know how morbidly formidable Shi Yan was. The other 3 considered each other the strongest enemies. And Shi Yan, in their eyes, was just a foolish kid who knew nothing and couldn't influence this battle. To their disdain, Shi Yan wasn't angry. Quite the contrary, he felt happy. If someone doesn't know your real strength, he will ignore you, which troubles him much later in the battle with you. Shi Yan accumulated his energy quietly, his visage relaxed. He calmly prepared everything carefully. He wanted to see what these 3 could do after all. Chapter 797, Undying Wood. Chapter 797, Undying Wood. Rainbow light shot out everywhere from the center of the combined 5 forbidden areas. Gaps between those beams were visible. Feng Rao, Ganji, and Peng Jia stayed hidden in the gaps, looking at the turtle shell with a grim countenance. They started to use their energy to pull it. However, Feng Rao's sound power and Ganji's Peng Jia's special powers were all useless. Peng Jia shrank his body 10 times. He became just 1/10 of the size of a normal adult. He swayed between the beams to go closer to the shell. Then, he extended his index finger, resizing it to be as small as a needle to inch towards and touch the turtle shell. Unfortunately, when his needle-like index finger approached the hard shell, a strange energy wave shot out. The ceasing light started to change. A rainbow light shot out like a ribbon, piercing through his index finger. Peng Jia retreated rapidly. His body was now even smaller than a dwarf. He couldn't help but shiver. When his index finger resumed its normal size, it was broken and bleeding. Peng Jia was frightened. He didn't dare try anymore, retreating to a place far away and using medicine to apply to his wound. His eyes had a look of distress. His power was considered to have many advantages among the 3 of them. However, no matter how careful he was, he still got injured. This frightened him a lot. He didn't dare act rashly anymore. Ganji and Feng Rao thought of no solutions. Their eyes glued to that strange shell, unable to conceal the desires in their heart. Anyway, they had no solution for this headache-given matter. Shi Yan was still musing. He looked like he wasn't planning to take any action besides simply glaring at that shell. He didn't know what it was, but he knew for sure that the halo twirling around that hard shell could pierce through any kind of matter. Even if he got his god body at its greatest peak, he didn't dare try. After a while, they had made no progress. Feng Rao, Ganji, and Peng Jia frowned, raked through their fantasy sky rings, and criticizing each other. Their words became more malignant and sinister. They seemed like they would burst out fighting each other anytime soon. The exquisite azure drawings on Feng Rao's smooth, white skin started to move when she was enraged, giving her a bizarre beauty. Although Shi Yan was busy, he looked nonchalant. He eyed the woman, Ganji, and Peng Jia without haste. Compared to the other 3, he looked more like an onlooker, someone who didn't care about what the results would be. I wonder if the jade token works, Feng Rao pondered for a while. She seemed to have something in her mind. She rose her hand, then grabbed something. The cube stone on Han Di's body flew up immediately, falling precisely into her jade palm, combining with the one she had. Ganji and Peng Jia got it. They frowned and threw her their square stones with a dark face. Shi Yan watched and found that their 4 square stones were exactly the same as Jiang Ji's stone. They seemed to make a key. The 4 stones combined to reveal the shape of a key. Feng Rao's group had their eyes brighten up as if they had finally found a solution they had never thought possible. They became excited looking at Shi Yan and shouting in unison. "Where's yours?" "Arg." Shi Yan couldn't help but beam a forced smile. He shook his head under their intense looks, showed them his hands and shrugged. "I'm sorry. I don't have it." "Jiangge didn't give you the stone?" Feng Rao's beautiful eyes sparkled brutally. She was enraged. She thought that they could solve it finally, but now the problem was Shiryen. Ganji and Pang Jia darkened their faces. The murderous intent in their eyes was obvious. 3 different auras slithered like invisible toxic snakes surrounding Shiryen. If he made a wrong move, they would kill him instantly. Shiryen was stern inwardly. He couldn't hold his snort. He was staying the furthest from the source of the rainbow light. Shiryen moved quickly to the gap nearest to him. He gathered his energy to prepare for a battle with the rage of the other 3. Feng Rao, Ganji, and Pang Jia had laid all of their hopes on the cube stones. Now they had 4 stones connected to each other and formed the shape of a key. It just needed one more piece to complete this key, which seemed to be able to open the way to that hard shell. The only exit was erased by Shiryen's words. Of course, they were enraged. Their looks with the brutal intentions as thick as black ink were aimed at Shiryen coldly. Shiryen's god's soul suddenly got extremely agitated. He continually urged space power in his sea of consciousness. Flows of soul consciousness with space energy twirled around his sea of consciousness and covered his soul altar. The surging agitation gradually vanished. The soul confinement that the other 3 planted on his soul was ineffective. A strange light sparkled in Feng Rao's exquisite and eccentric face. Her eyes blinked as she stooped and sighed. Not bad. You can dodge our soul confinement. No wonder why you aren't afraid at all. Seems like we've underestimated you. I don't have it, really. Even if you kill me, it's no use. Shiryen smiled miserably. What about getting out there and bringing Jiang Ge back here? *CK it. Do you think we have so much time? Do you think you can get out of the extreme purgatory field that easy? Pang Jia couldn't help but scold loudly. Shiryen, that is the Undying wood. It is not the turtle shell like you thought. Shortly, a soul popped up in his sea of consciousness. The vermilion bird True Flame was talking to him. I have the vermilion bird's knowledge. The Undying wood's really marvelous. It's the top treasure of the wood class in the 5 elements. It's tougher than the toughest metal. There's no sharp weapon that could cut it. Undying wood? Shiryen was cautious discreetly. He was moved. Besides its hardness, what are its other characteristics? Strange treasure Undying wood of the wood class has the magical but natural wooden texture. With this magical texture, the blacksmith with supernatural power could portray the formations according to that wood texture to create the most unimaginable and subtle abilities. Can I approach it? Didn't you take in a large amount of wood essence chi in the last barrier you've just broken? Use that essence chi to cover your entire body and try, the vermilion bird True Flame told him. My information comes from the vermilion bird before he left the Grace mainland. We don't have deeper knowledge about the Undying wood yet, so it is not clear enough. I heard that the Undying wood comes from a divine tree after it became rotten. But this piece isn't rotten, so it's called Undying wood. Extremely strange, right? The Undying wood comes from a rotten divine tree. The tree was rotten, but its wood wasn't rotten. What kind of logic was that? Shiryen was surprised. He listened to the heaven flame attentively. He suddenly had a strange feeling that the creation of the Undying wood contained some truth of nature. The wood texture barrier you've broken simulates the natural texture of the Undying wood. Since you've got it magically, can you condense it and use it to cover your body entirely? At least, you can cover one arm of yours to touch it, continued the vermilion bird True Flame. Shiryen was astounded for a while. He instinctively tried as he was told. He urged and drew the wood essence chi from his flesh and bone, trying to pour it into one arm. His arm became brown and gray just like a dried tree trunk. It looked a bit strange to him. At this moment, the sinister looks of Feng Rao, Pang Jia, and Ganji still gazed at Shiryen tightly. The murderous intent was so heavy that it could burst in any minute. Don't act rashly, you guys, Shiryen suddenly shouted, his face solemn. Wait a minute and give me time to try. I'm a blacksmith. I have knowledge of formations and barriers. This is why I was able to break the barriers faster than you guys. Yeah, it's the barrier that creates those fatal light beams. Let me try. Feng Rao's group halted, their faces astounded. They knew something was happening in that central area, so they knew it wasn't the barrier like Shiryen had said. They doubted his words. However, they were shaken upon hearing that Shiryen wanted to try. They thought that in the worst case, Shiryen would be crushed into pieces in that source of light. In that case, they didn't need to do anything to erase him, and they could even have a chance to observe the bursting energy of that fatal source. The three agreed tacitly. They stopped gathering energy and just gave a snort while watching Shiryen move. "Keep your eye on the three for me." A thought was sent, and the heaven flames started to fly around his soul altar. They accumulated energy and waited for a chance. More wood essence chi was urged out of his body and created a layer covering him entirely. Shortly, he became a shriveled tree log, his entire body brown and gray like a rotten tree. In this special form, he carefully touched the light beams next to him. Sizzle, sizzle, sizzle. Contact between the light and his finger created strange sounds. The sharp light seemed to be softened magically. The tremendous piercing power vanished. Shiryen was excited. A bright smile hung on the corner of his mouth. Ganji, Feng Rao, and Peng Jia noticed his moves. Divine light sparkled gloriously in their eyes as they gawked disbelievingly. Shiryen laughed contentedly while shooting like a brown light towards the undying wood. He didn't bother with the scorching looks of the other three burning his back. Beams of light shining on his body were all softened. When the steam arose on all over his body, Shiryen descended right over the undying wood. He didn't say anything but grabbed it fiercely. Tens of thousands of rainbow beams disappeared into the undying wood at the moment his fingers touched the piece of wood. The undying wood became simple and natural, but it was as heavy as a mountain. The subtle, exquisite wood texture of this piece looked like a strange but magical star map. Peng Jia, Ganji, and Feng Rao's eyes reddened instantly. They didn't say anything but released their god domains, dashing toward Shiryen at their max speed. 3 waves of formidable energy swept over like 3 meteors shooting across the sky with an imposing momentum. Rumble, 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 rumble. Shattering and collapsing sounds echoed from the 5 palaces. The earth cracked. The mountain shook and collapsed. The barrier covering this area was torn apart. Immense gray mist flooded into the place furiously. The strange magnetic field of the extreme purgatory field vanished into thin air. Chapter 798, Star Map. Chapter 798, Star Map. The 5 pieces of undying wood had joined and created a strange star map. Shiryen skimmed through it and found a small, that looked like the mark of the treasure on a treasure map. As he had been with Zi Yao for a while in the glorious amethyst star, Shiryen had a general knowledge of the Raging Flame Star area's layout. At first glance, he knew that the marked spot was near the border of the Land of God Punishment and the 9-star Chamber of Commerce. It was the most magical area of the land where people could hide from the soul consciousness searching. Besides the Lonesome Dead territory, the Land of God Punishment had some more special areas similar to the Lonesome Dead territory. The location on the map was such a similar spot. However, he hadn't had enough time to study carefully because Feng Rao, Ganji, and Peng Jia stormed towards him, trying to snatch the star map in his hand. While snorting, Shiryen immediately put the star map into his fantasy sky ring. Seeing the palace collapsing and the barriers disappearing, he made up his mind quickly to use the star power. His soul consciousness cooperated with space power, urging all of his energy. Just like a flow of shooting light, Shiryen rocketed into the sky of the extreme purgatory field. The barrier shattered. All the energy sealing the extreme purgatory field disappeared. There was nothing constraining them now. A flow of light shot directly up into the sky. Shortly, it disappeared from the gray cloud layer of the purgatory star, heading towards the immense star area. Beneath him were Feng Rao, Ganji, and Peng Jia chasing close after. A flame burned angrily in their eyes. They all escaped the extreme purgatory field, entering the dead, quiet outer space. Those 3 people had dreamed of the star map for a long time. They had invested a lot of time and effort. At the very last moment, Shiryen had interfered and taken what should have been theirs. They could hardly accept this. Although they all had the 3rd sky of King God Realm cultivation base, Shiryen's star power was magical. He was moving forward in the trajectories of the stars, making curve after curve in outer space. At the same time, he urged space energy to cross spaces in a short time. Feng Rao, Ganji, and Peng Jia couldn't get to him immediately. They could only stare as his figure disappeared further and further. Rage surged in their hearts. While the 4 silhouettes flew away from the extreme purgatory field, the guard of this special prison staying on the other side of the star spotted them and the commotion they were stirring. Shortly, the jailer spread his order. War chariots flew out one by one, entering dark outer space. The extreme purgatory field was a magical area of the dark firmament divine nation. It was the training place for the new generation of experts. And now it suddenly had a commotion that made the jailer freak out. He hastened to report Du Tianlu on the event. The war chariots of the extreme purgatory field turned in the sky before moving into outer space. Experts guarding the planet came to the extreme purgatory field. Seeing the earth shaking and mountain collapsing in that area, their faces darkened. They knew something really troublesome had just happened, and it was out of their ability to control it. When Du Tianlu got the news, he was frightened and indignant at the same time. He came there at his max speed and reported what happened to the owner of the Dark Firmament Divine Nation, Du Tianji. Unfortunately, Du Tianji seemed to seclude and cultivate. Du Tianli's report sank like a rock into the sea. He received no response. This made Du Tianlu more anxious. He constantly ordered the jailer to pursue and capture the escapees. It was very dark and cold in outer space. Shuryen squinted while his soul altar was spinning, urging the Star Power Upanishad and Space Power Upanishad to continue its powers at the same time. Waves of space energy were rippling through his body. They seemed to be the doors that connected space to space shortly. His figure pierced through waves like a meteor. He was moving so fast that Feng Rao, Ganji, and Peng Jia could only sense him vaguely. It was going to be very difficult to catch him. *CK it. We were all wrong. We've been watching that area for a long time and finally, we let that kid take it all. Ganji cursed, his face dark and grimaced. If I catch that brat, I will skin him alive and draw his bones out. Peng Jia looked ferocious, talking through his gritted teeth. Feng Rao stayed quiet. She was gloomy as resentment filled her heart. She had thought that she had used Shuryen well. However, everything went the opposite of what she planned, and it was now out of her reach. She couldn't imagine why Shuryen, at his first sky of King God realm, could escape with such speed in the Star Sea. He was so fast that they could only keep up in sensing him. They could never come closer. He is only the first sky of King God realm cultivation base. His energy should be limited. Since he is running madly like that, he will drain his energy fast, Ganji said after contemplating for a while with a malicious look. Just let him be content flying for a while. I don't think he can drop us in the end. Wait until his energy is drained considerably. Then, we will be able to catch him. True. The first sky of King God realm has a limited endurance. He can't keep using his energy for a long time, Peng Jia nodded. As long as we know the direction he is going, I think we can capture him. Be careful. When we flew out of the Purgatory Star, I saw the war chariots flying out. Seems like the jailer of the extreme purgatory field reported the situation and sent someone up here. Feng Rao wasn't as confident as they were. Those who belong to the Dark Firmament Divine Nation aren't easy to deal with. We shouldn't let them spot us. Afterward, Ganji and Peng Jia held solemn faces. They all knew how intimidating the experts of the Dark Firmament Divine Nation were. The three of them immediately concealed their auras and retrieved part of their living energy fluctuations. They squeezed their jade tokens to stimulate the magical energy in it. Those jade tokens weren't only effective in the extreme purgatory field. After they left the place, they could still prevent the sensing ability of the warriors. After they had released the energy in their jade tokens, their auras and life energy faded away. They became invisible in the galaxy. Warriors standing in the Purgatory Star's war chariots couldn't sense anything using their soul consciousness. Begrudgingly, the war chariots scattered and started to search on a larger scale. Thus, their formation was stretched. Although the war chariots used the energy of divine crystals, they couldn't be faster than the third sky of King God realm experts when they used the surging energy in their bodies. Gradually, those war chariots were left far behind Peng Jia, Ganji, and Feng Rao. Shuryen, of course, understood that Feng Rao, Ganji, and Peng Jia weren't easy to mess with. He didn't dare pause using the powers of his star and space Upanishad created in his soul altar. His flying was now like a light arrow. As he flew at max speed, he couldn't check his location on the map. He just knew vaguely that he was heading toward the land of God punishment and the 9-star Chamber of Commerce. This star map should have been created by the former imperial master of the Dark Firmament Divine Nation a long time ago. The marked location should contain an earth-shattering secret. Otherwise, Feng Rao's group wouldn't have spent several hundred years hiding just to take this map. They sure wanted to get the secret of this map. He didn't know what the secret was or its significance, but if this thing had fallen into his hands, he wouldn't hand it out easily. This was especially true for Ganji, Peng Jia, and Feng Rao. None of them had good intentions towards him. Feng Rao had used him to deal with Han Di so she could have a free hand to grab the star map. Shi Yan wasn't a nice man. Since he was used and now he knew he had a big secret in that star map. Why would he not take it anyway? Shi Yan didn't really bother with the dead pursuit by the 3 experts at the 3rd sky of King God Realm. He didn't think that they could take his life easily. Staying in that forbidden land and breaking layer after layer of barriers, the understanding of natural powers and his powers Upanishad was carved deeper into his mind. Shi Yan believed that if he was given time to comprehend those principles and had abundant energy, breaking to the new level, the 2nd sky of King God Realm, wouldn't be such a tough task. He had this confidence. He was confident that when he reached the 2nd sky of King God Realm, even if Ganji, Feng Rao, and Peng Jia joined hands to fight him, they wouldn't be able to catch him. Since he was confident, he wasn't afraid of them anymore. He sneered and accelerated. The essence chi from Handi's corpse was collected and refined in his acupuncture points. Gradually, energy started to gush out. Shi Yan cracked a smile, guiding those beams of mysterious energy in his body. He was moving even faster. If it was in the past, when the mysterious martial spirit was refining the essence chi from the dead, Shi Yan couldn't be distracted because he would risk negative feelings backfiring on him. However, after the period of breaking barriers, his soul became steady. Thus, the negative feelings didn't affect him much. His mind was still calm and sound. With the supplemental energy, his essence chi was refilled the 2nd time. His moving speed wasn't reduced by energy shortage. Feng Rao, Ganji, and Peng Jia were trying their best to find him in the galaxy. Half a month had passed quietly. Although they were full of confidence, the 3 were now exhausted. They thought that since Shi Yan had only the 1st sky of King God Realm cultivation base, he would slow down early from loss of endurance. They were all wrong. After half a month, they had consumed half of their energy. They had to slow down. Shi Yan's speed didn't change. It actually increased significantly. The other 3 were exhausted. Their face grimaced even more. Does that Mother Asterisk Kerr have only the 1st sky of King God Realm cultivation base? Were we all wrong? Ganji panted, talking foul-mouthed. This was the sign that they used energy excessively. Peng Jia gritted his teeth, his eyes like that of an angry ghost. He breathed heavily. If I can catch him, I will torture him to death. This brat is tough enough. Seems we got tricked. We thought he couldn't be a threat, and turns out he the one who got it all. Feng Rao regretted it too much. She wanted to kill herself. At this moment, the 3 of them didn't dare to look down on Shi Yan anymore. Being able to move in outer space 15 days continually at fast speed and his energy wasn't running out yet. Who has ever met such a 1st sky of King God Realm warrior? They cursed as their hearts sank. They now didn't consider Shi Yan a small character anymore. They were vigilant discreetly. They thought that when they saw Shi Yan, they had to pull themselves all together, and they shouldn't be careless leading to capsize their boats. Ah! Feng Rao suddenly shouted in awe. That brat isn't good now. His speed has slowed down 2 times. Fast! Faster! We must get him. Ganji and Peng Jia put on the excited visage. Chapter 799. Bear the Fangs. Chapter 799. Bear the Fangs. On a massive floating meteorite, gray-brown clusters of rock scattered. This place was bleak, lonesome, and cold. No living energy fluctuation could be found. Shi Yan paled, revealing that he was exhausted as he consumed too much energy. A gleam of insignificant desperation crossed his eyes. Ganji and Pangjia had their faces brightened up. They couldn't hold in their sinister laughter while walking towards Shiyan. Feng Rao was careful. First, she frowned and surveyed the surroundings. Seeing no barrier or formation, she exhaled in relief but still put up guard. She sneered, "So, no more running." Shiyan forced a smile. "Can't run any longer. Kid, you do have guts. You dare pluck out the tiger's tooth. You dare be greedy and steal what is ours. You don't even know how to treasure your life." Peng Jia grinned fiendishly, taking action first. Ganji slowly approached, launching his god domain. As soon as the 100-time gravitational field appeared, it pressed the rocks which cracked and exploded. "This is for you." Shiyan acted as if he was really frightened and that he couldn't dodge his fate. He threw the star map made of the Undying wood without any hesitation. The thing shot across the area, flying toward the middle area between the other three. Ganji, Pangjia, and Feng Rao showed their greed. They jolted immediately to grab the thing. Feng Rao was still vigilant. Her plump lips curled a cold curve as she threw the thunderbolt ball out. Immediately, several thousand azure lightning strikes slithered towards Shiyan like a pit of snakes. Shiyan seemed to know the power of the thunderbolt ball. He paled and retreated. However, since those several thousand beams of lighting were connected directly to Feng Rao and her pure energy in her body, it was hard to dodge them all. Although Shiyan was fast, he still received 10 or more strikes. He screamed painfully. His god body was charred with thick burns. It seemed his god body had been exhausted, and now it received even more wounds. Shiyan was put to the point where he couldn't hold it anymore. The lightning struck him out of the place into the cold, starry space. As Ganji and Pangjia saw Feng Rao attacking Shiyan and how he got hurt by the lightning and fell off the meteorite, they didn't focus on killing him. They hurled themselves towards the star map. Before they had come here, they had a plan. Right when they saw Shiyan, they would kill him first. However, when they saw Shiyan throwing the star map out, they forgot their initial plan. Greed had dominated their minds. They wanted to take the star map at any cost. Uncontrollably, Ganji and Pangjia immediately attacked each other without showing mercy or politeness. When Feng Rao saw Shiyan get hit by the thunderbolt ball, she didn't dare waste time. She understood that Shiyan could dodge his death for now, but it didn't mean that he could avoid their ears and eyes everywhere. Thus, she decided to join the battle to compete for the star map. As they were all at the third sky of King God Realm, when any of them grabbed the star map, he or she just needed to flee away at their max speed, and the others couldn't catch up with him or her. Thus, whoever touched the star map first would gain a significant advantage. At this moment, the three brutal villains at the third sky of King God Realm burst out the deadly battle for a star map that hid a tremendous secret. They attacked each other furiously and mercilessly. Their powers were urged to the acme as they hated the fact that they couldn't kill whoever went at the fastest speed to grab the star map first. Staying on another meteorite in the dark sky, Shiyan's eyes were cold and sinister. His stiff mouth showed his cold and harsh intentions. He gritted his teeth and brushed off the azure lightning strikes on his body. Each of these azure lightning strikes was sharp and powerful. They cut his body fiercely and left fine cuts on his skin. Since Feng Rao had the third sky of King God Realm and her thunderbolt ball was a divine-grade treasure, Shiyan hardly bore its attacks. Fortunately, his power was refined and his god body had been quenched many times. Now it had the toughness that normal people couldn't even imagine. Shiyan didn't get hurt badly. He just needed to urge his dead power Upanishad to brush them off. Shortly after, he destroyed all the lightning strikes that had managed to get in his body. He had spent 10 drops of immortal demon blood to heal his bleeding cuts. His wounds healed quickly. Rumble, rumble, rumble. Furious energy waves swarmed over from the massive meteorite in front of him. Shiyan understood that the three experts were trying to kill each other. For that star map, they demonstrated their mightiest powers. The vicious intent in his eyes became darker. He stooped and sneered, but didn't hasten to show himself yet. The three of them were the experts with a greater realm than his. Also, their powers were strange and supernatural. If he decided to be stubborn and played with them 1-on-3, he would die a pathetic death. After half a month of running madly, the other three had consumed a lot of their energy. As they were attacking each other crazily, no matter what the result was, their powers would be weakened badly. When their battle ended, Serene could save a lot of efforts. Thus, he had to bear Feng Rao's attack to erase the others' doubts. He had given them the thought that he was hurt badly and that he wouldn't be able to create any trouble later. Indeed, as soon as Feng Rao saw him get hit by the lightning strikes bloodily, her tense nerves had been relaxed. When she saw Ganji and Peng Jia fighting with each other, she didn't bother eradicating him. Instead, she joined the battle immediately. If Feng Rao had been more careful, she would have flown out there to check Sheren's real condition. She wouldn't have been so incautious. Too bad she got another wrong guess of Sheren's abilities. Seren swallowed the broad bean-like pellets and medicines. Seren hid quietly by the meteorite, trying his best to recover quickly. Ear-splitting explosions reverberated. Energy pressed the rock which exploded, shooting out of the massive meteorite near him. Seeing such scenes, Seren felt excited. He laughed continually as he waited for a chance to take action. The medicinal efficacy melted in his body, turning into the immense vitality that nurtured his internal organs. Half a month of running crazily couldn't really wear him out. With the essence chi from Handi's dead body, his condition was much better than what the other three saw. Pretending to be weak to lure the enemies and giving them chances to hurt him were all part of his plans. Everything was playing according to his script. Seren waited patiently and just sneered while waiting for the battle on the meteorite to end. He would wait until the sounds of the fierce battle stopped. Those explosions were terrible. They had shattered the entire meteorite. From his location, he could see massive holes there. The meteorite near him crumpled. Rocks shot out everywhere. The battle taking place over there must have been formidable. Seren urged his energy to cover his entire body, hiding and moving toward the battle area. Crack, crack, crack. Giant rocks under Ganji's manipulation were bombarding aimlessly. Each of those rocks was around a mu of land. When they curved in the air, the energy they contained was so intimidating. Peng Jia shrank his body to 1/10 of an adult size. He seemed to be cooperating with Ganji to fight Feng Rao. The star map lay still where Seren had thrown it. It seemed like no one had touched it yet. Aha! Feng Rao cried, the entire power of her body fusing with her sound, turning into an invisible spear that smashed Ganji's rocks into crumbles. The three of them were entangling each other and draining their energy rapidly. After spending half a month running like crazy without a short break to recover, 70% to 80% of their power had been consumed. At this moment, their god domains weren't as strong as they used to be. Their fighting competencies had been decreased 1 level. From what Seren could see, Feng Rao was closest to him. He could see that her exquisite face was pale, which was the sign of consuming a lot of energy. Ganji and Peng Jia were also worn out. However, they all clenched their jaws and resisted as they thought that if they could kill the others, they would be the ultimate winner. Gravity lock! Ganji suddenly shouted. The gravitational field covering his body shrank before bursting out much stronger. Feng Rao's body floating in the air sank down as if she got a whole mountain put on her shoulders. She felt helter-skelter. Peng Jia shrank his body, ambushing an area. His arms were exposed like 2 slithering, boneless snakes. A flow of cold and malicious energy immediately attacked Feng Rao's tender body. Feng Rao shuddered, her figure became more unstable. Several hundred rocks, each of them as big as a mu of land, fell directly on Feng Rao and buried her. Ganji and Peng Jia cheered. They didn't care if Feng Rao was still alive or not and hurriedly flew to that star map. A minute ago, they had joined hands to deal with the woman, and now they started to attack each other. Different energies impacted in the void. Light shot out dazzlingly above the star map. Peng Jia was weaker. He spat out a mouthful of blood. His shrunk god body shattered under the impact. His eyes became empty. Ganji laughed crazily. You're still an amateur compared to me. While talking, he extended his hand to grab the star map. He was so contented thinking that his 200 years of effort had been rewarded marvelously. However, the buzzing hissing echoed right at this moment. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The 3 blinding lights flashed, then disappeared. They then stabbed Ganji's hand, piercing through and pinned it on a rock next to the star map. At the same moment, an imposing punch created by starlight descended grumblingly like a mallet of the archangel, covering Pangjia's flying body. Crack! Crack! Sounds of breaking bones echoed from Pangjia's body. His god body exploded. His bones jutted out from the mess of his bloody flesh while his face was covered in blood. He was dying under the stealthy attack. The massive starlight punch was condensed by countless star dots. After it finished its stealthy attack, it didn't stop but continued to pound on Feng Rao, who was still buried under so many rocks. Crack, crack, crack. Massive rocks burst off in the furious screams of Feng Rao. The starlight punch had made a formidable hole on this meteorite. Feng Rao's beautiful body was exposed in the middle of the deep pit. She was wounded. Blood and the delicate tattoos on her body created a red, eccentric, and inspiring drawing. Shiyan's cold and harsh body appeared like a ghost next to Pangjia. He didn't hesitate at all as he gathered space power covering Pangjia, who didn't have a bit of energy to move a finger now. He then cut Pangjia's limbs cut and his soul altar exploded shortly after. As Pangjia had just died, Shiyan dashed through the place, approaching Ganji. He laughed fiendishly, baring his bloodthirsty fangs. Chapter 800, Cut Dead. Chapter 800, Cut Dead. Shiyan's ambush on Pangjia and Feng Rao were deadly, particularly to Feng Rao, who was pressed deeper into her pit so that she wouldn't be able to wiggle out of there. These serial actions actually happened faster than a slow talk. Ganji was pinned in the hard rock by the 3 bone thorns that pierced through his hand. Seeing Shiyan gliding through the air to approach him, Ganji felt an extreme rage and pain. At the same time, he wanted to vomit blood. No matter how hard he had imagined, he couldn't predict Shiyan's dark and vicious mind. Shiyan had condensed a chain from starlight to bind him tightly. Ganji discolored. Crack, crack. He tried to urge his energy without caring about his bleeding hand. The gravitational field was rising one more time. 200 times heavier gravity. Shiyan sank under the gravitational field effects while dashing forward. He fell toward Ganji. Kid, you court death. Ganji roared indignantly. A massive rock under his feet flew out instantly like a cannonball, shelling Shiyan grumblingly. Boom, boom, boom. The starlight chains thrust through that massive rock. Chipped rocks shot out massively. Shiyan stood like a mighty storm inside the shower of rock, his face cold and grating. His god domain changed all of a sudden. Space confinement. The rocks that curved and exploded in the air were suddenly suspended in the air. They stayed still strangely in the void. Even Ganji, with his third sky of King God Realm cultivation base and his magical power, was affected. He could only stare at Shiyan, who came closer as the energy in his body stopped circulating. Break! Ganji faced the sky and screamed. His face reddened as he furiously urged his power to break the space confinement. Ganji's essence chi condensed into the light blades that shot up into the sky from his body, aimed at Shiyan. Shiyan's face remained unchanged. While he was hovering in the sky, his power's Upanishad changed again. A slit was torn near the horizon, engulfing countless light blades that shot out from Ganji's body. With an imposing momentum, Shiyan changed his god domain a second time. Shining massive hand seals as big as the doors pressed down, bombarding Ganji. Boom, boom, boom. The dead seals pounding on Ganji's body were like giant hammers. His god body had many concave spots. He became extremely exhausted. As the hand seals contained the mysteries of death, as soon as they hit Ganji's god body, they immediately started wreaking havoc on his bodily functions, preventing him from gathering his essence chi. The old man could only attempt to dodge with futile attempts. Ganji, Pangjia, and Feng Rao spent half a month strenuously chasing after him without any pause to refill their energy. Right when they arrived at this meteorite, the three had engaged in a battle, which was also the second time they had to use massive amounts of energy. After being ambushed, one of Ganji's hands was useless now. Shurian's dead seals had shelled him badly. Eventually, Ganji was hurt severely. The vitality in his body was running out under the dead energy invasion. Ganji's face and god body paled like a paper sheet. Blood trickled from the corners of his mouth. He was distressed. Shurian hadn't shown even a hint of his mercy. His thought flickered, and the wheezing sound of the three bone thorns arose again. Shurian was gathering and condensing the dead energy unceasingly together with the negative energy. Massive dead seals appeared in the air one more time. They looked more like the evil eyes gazing at Ganji. They pressed down with a loud crash. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The whistle of the three bone thorns was so ear-piercingly loud that it felt like it could even stir up people's souls. It made Ganji's his heart crack. Crack, crack, crack. As the dead seals were pressing down, the area where Ganji was lying looked like a block of tofu under a harsh impact. Chipped rocks became powder, scattering with the wind. The light cage Ganji was trying to maintain remained deformed, revealing his pale god body. The bone thorns thrust into Ganji's chest, smashing his internal organs. His broken bones and pieces of intestines splashed out from his body. Ganji was completely damaged under the strike. His god domain disappeared, and the 100 times heavier gravitational field vanished. "We can talk," Ganji screamed. He finally expressed true fear. He faced the sky and cried, "Give me time to talk. We can negotiate." Boom. The massive starlight mallet pounded from the sky like a meteor falling into the earth. It hit Ganji right at his chest. Right when he finished, his god body couldn't hold it anymore. It exploded shortly. Cut limbs shot out as his body fell. "I'm sorry. You have the third sky of King God Realm cultivation base. I can't afford to be reckless." Shurian finally said something as he landed by Ganji. The three bone thorns spun around him like 3 lightning strikes. Although Ganji's god body was destroyed, his soul altar wasn't shattered. In this given circumstance, he knew that he couldn't resist Shurian anymore. Ganji didn't hesitate, making his soul altar fly out in an attempt to escape into outer space to preserve his god soul. As long as his soul seal hadn't been damaged, when his god body was destroyed, he had 2 options, of which he could choose to find a host and cultivate to restore, or he could use a pregnant woman's baby to resurrect. As long as his god soul wasn't eradicated, he still had hope. With the right period of time, it wasn't impossible to regain his current realm. The soul altar was a magical thing that nothing could compare to. Secret treasures that could break the soul altar were really rare in this world. Ganji's 3-tiered soul altar floated like a ghost. He threw a glare at Shurian with resentment before running away. "Get out." Shurian's face was icy cold. He touched his glabella and his soul altar flew out. The dark section of the 2nd tier in his soul altar instantly released an eccentric and evil suction force. Ganji's 3-tiered soul altar struggled. His god soul felt the deepest fear ever. However, no matter how hard he had shaken, the soul altar couldn't escape Shurian's black hole-like soul altar. Ganji's soul altar disappeared little by little. Shurian's eccentric power Upanishad had swallowed the 3-tiered soul altar, leaving nothing. Crack! At this moment, a strange sound arose. The echoing and energy condensed, shooting towards Shurian's chest. As his soul altar had flown out of his body, his god body became weaker. After the impact of that energy, blood in the shape of a flower bloomed on his chest. A hole was broken open right there. Crack, crack, crack. Feng Rao, who used to have no bit of energy remaining, floated up from her pit, wiping away the blood trickles from her mouth and her body. She was stunned, looking at the soul altar floating outside Shurian's body. Feng Rao had never heard or seen any supernatural powers Upanishad that could engulf the soul altar. This bizarre and malignant power had never appeared in the Raging Flame Star area before. None of the people there had ever heard about it. Such evil existence made Feng Rao shiver in fright. "Kid, what kind of evil powers Upanishad are you cultivating?" Feng Rao paled, holding the thunderbolt ball. She looked quite unnatural. While she was talking, each of her words was fused with her power Upanishad. For the time being, the extremely loud sound reverberated, creating a tremendous sound wave swarming toward Shiryen. Feng Rao had startled Shiryen. He didn't think much, immediately calling his soul altar back to his god body. Shiryen didn't bother with the hole in his chest, using the space power as the foundation to create the god domain. Space blockade. Each syllable falling in his god domain was frozen for a while. Shiryen didn't reply to her. Starlight shot out from his 10 fingers, breaking her words with a cold face. Shiryen conveniently grabbed the star map and put it away. He turned and gazed at Feng Rao, his visage somber. It seems that it is not only me who calculates a lot. Feng Rao's conditions were much better than what Shiryen had thought. Ganji and Pang Jia had joined hands to attack her, putting her under the massive rocks. Shiryen had pounded her using the massive starlight punch. Although Feng Rao had been hurt continually, at this moment, she looked robust. The energy was circulating vigorously in her body, which proved that her essence chi was still abundant. This woman's competence was beyond Shiryen's imagination, and it was indeed intimidating. I've still calculated wrong. Feng Rao's face was dark and cold. I've calculated that Ganji and Pang Jia would use tens of thousands of rock to attack me. I would wait under the pile of rocks they had put on me until they finished their battle. Then, I planned on coming out and cleaning it up. I didn't calculate that you could interfere and hurt me this second time. She looked at Shiryen angrily. The cunning one should be you. Ganji, Pang Jia, and I had underestimated you. And today, they are dead from your hands, the hands of the one that no one thought was strong enough. You've gained the upper hand. I think Ganji and Pang Jia couldn't close their eyes even after their death now. Shiryen shook his head mockingly. I have the lowest realm here. If I haven't used tricks, I would have been killed quickly. He didn't hasten to take action. The bleeding hole in his chest had several broken vessels. Once he was engaged in a battle, they would affect his energy circulating. While he was talking, the immortal demon blood was urged to heal the wounds. It seemed that Feng Rao was also thinking the same thing. She understood that Shiryen was tough. At the same time, Feng Rao was also wounded. Before she talked to him, she had swallowed pellets and medicines. She was recovering her energy quietly. She had the third sky of King God Realm cultivation base, and the pellets she used were all divine grade ones. She believed her recovery speed was faster than Shiryen's. Ganji and Pang Jia were all dead. This area was bleak and isolated. No one would pass by. In other words, she had only one enemy, which was Shiryen, of course. As long as she could kill Shiryen, she could finally achieve her goal. I have never heard about any wicked powers Upanishad that can swallow the soul altar. I'm curious. Who are you after all? Feng Rao still maintained a distance from Shiryen as she was afraid that he would take action when she wasn't vigilant. She was talking while also staying on guard. I'm also curious about what's hidden in that star map. Why is it worth several hundred years of your time and even your life? Shiryen smiled. The star map emerged on his palm. He cocked his head to look at it before looking back at Feng Rao. Will you explain it to me? If you tell me the method and the power that you use to swallow the soul altar, I will tell you what the star map hides. How does that sound? Feng Rao gently wiped the blood on her body. Her clothes were short, not enough to conceal the marvelous features of her body. Today, they were even more ragged, exposing her mesmerizing glamour. While she moved her jade-like hand, blue tattoo glistened strangely and beautifully, which were able to sway people's souls. Come forward. We should talk. Feng Rao walked forward honestly. While her long legs were moving, her beauty flashed from time to time. Dreamy words came out from her mouth that made people drunk and listen to it. Shiryen's soul trembled. He couldn't help but think that she was starting to look hotter. The lustful flame of desire was ignited in the deep place of his heart. He started to gasp. He understood that this woman was attacking him. This was a seducing sound. Chapter 801, A Sensual, Bloody Battle. Chapter 801, A Sensual, Bloody Battle. Feng Rao walked step by step. Her flawless snow-white soft skin was exposed. The blood stains on her body seemed to merge with the blue tattoos on her body. They all vanished. Her ragged, tight robe couldn't hide her generous glamour. While she was walking, her beautiful thighs parted, and vaguely, the delightful sight between them flashed from time to time, which could make a man's nose bleed, unable to control the innermost desire. While she was talking, her nasal sound was heavy, releasing alluring moans. They were like the drumbeats stirring up the sea in Shurian's heart, which started to seethe vehemently. The affection in her beautiful eyes was as deep as the ocean that could melt people's souls, making their god bodies weakened. This look and her evilly beautiful body had provided a seducing enticement that could make people's soul obsequious. Shurian couldn't bear this inviting gesture further. Killing is not good. We can shake hands and discuss in happiness. We should cooperate well, right? Feng Rao chuckled mildly while swaying her generous body to pose her endless glamour. Shurian's eyes reddened. Anyway, it wasn't because he was using the third sky of Rampage Realm. He was charmed. He gasped slightly, his eyes like hot fire from gazing at Feng Rao's body. He walked uncontrollably toward Feng Rao. Feng Rao stuck out her seducing tongue, licking her lips and revealing her stunning bearings. Shurian's breathing became hard. Feng Rao could even hear his breathing from 10 meters away. She became happier as she was content discreetly. Although her eyes were filled with endless affection, her heart was cold and sinister. To her sound power, the closer she was to the target, the greater the chance of success. Her attack would become more intimidating. Bringing Shurian closer, she wanted to kill him with one strike, leaving him no chance for a counterattack. With her experience gained during this period, she didn't dare look down on Shurian anymore. Shurian was now the most dangerous rival, much more dangerous than Ganji and Pengjia. She also knew that Shurian's schemes were wild and dark. She was afraid of being trapped unknowingly. She wouldn't attack rashly until Shurian touched her. And then, just like he had lost his soul somewhere, Shurian's hot eyes glued to her while he walked towards her. Eventually, he reached Feng Rao. Good then, we can talk more. Why would we need to risk our lives, right? Feng Rao chuckled more. Her alluring, charming voice ran directly into his heart. She extended one soft, jade-like hand to touch the bleeding hole on Shurian's chest. Her eyes observed Shurian's face all the time, not missing a single moment. When she spotted any signs on his face, she would attack immediately and then retreat. Shurian's space power had the nemesis effect on her power. She knew that his power could make her freeze for a while. At the moment, she didn't dare relax her tense nerves. Extending her jade-like hand, she gazed at Shurian's face cautiously. A small section of her middle finger had probed into the bleeding hole in Shurian's chest. Gay. Shurian roared, but his eyes were still dull. He embraced Feng Rao's body, pushing her against a big rock. A gleam of fear sparkled in her eyes. However, she didn't dare move rashly because Shurian's countenance was still dull. Apparently, he was still under her alluring voice control. Thus, although he was hugging her tight, she thought that it was just his masculine instinct. She was still happy discreetly. Her jade-like inched into the hole in his chest. Just a little bit further, and she could grab Shurian's heart and squeeze it off. At this moment, Shurian was hugging her tight. He did what any other man would do, his hands moving towards her ample rear end and waist. Trying not to show her disgust, Feng Rao continued smiling. However, she gave a cold gaze into Shurian's eyes. Her hand had touched the bleeding hole in Shurian's chest and was about to reach a broken vein. Feng Rao discolored. Her succulent red lips parted, releasing the fatal sound. At this moment, an icy cold energy covered and entered her body. It then started to rage. At the same time, her leather robe was ripped apart. She didn't have time to react before feeling something invade into the slit between her legs, something as hot as burning fire. Extreme pain swarmed over her. There was fear in Feng Rao's eyes. Her thoughts shifted, and she realized that her virginity was gone. Looking at Shurian, she saw the mocking and ridiculing look in his eyes, eyes that previously appeared dull and dumb. Ah! The extreme pain came from her lower body. Feng Rao couldn't help but scream. She felt like her lower body was torn apart under this bastard's strong attack. She couldn't adjust her body to endure such pain. However, she was more frightened to find out that the member of this bastard had sent the evil energy that could possibly cut off her life force from her body. From between her legs, this energy spread out and entered her blood, flesh, and internal organs. Her vessels were restrained, making her energy circulation stagnant. Break! Feng Rao used her last bit of effort to gather her remaining energy to merge with her sound. She attempted to break Shiyan's heart, the crucial organ. Does it feel good? Shiyan grinned, straightening his body to thrust deeper. At the same time, he released space power. Feng Rao's charming noises halted. A big hand gripped her soft hand, which was placed in the hole in Shiyan's chest. The energy in her hand exploded, giving her a twinge as if it was about to crack open. The energy backfired into her body. Looking at the dark and sinister man harassing her, feeling her private area pounded savagely, Feng Rao's beautiful eyes reflected an extreme fear. However, she was restrained to the point that she couldn't even scream. You court death yourself. Don't blame me. Shiyan sneered, continuing his invasion of her body without showing any bit of mercy. His strong hands pinned her hands on the rock. He was using the crudest method to occupy her forcefully. I'll risk my life to fight you. As she had the third sky of King God Realm cultivation base, Feng Rao screamed with hostility and broke the space barrier. Her small hand slid out like a slithering snake. Her sharp fingernails dug into Shiyan's flesh. She seemed to be going crazy, biting Shiyan's shoulder and trying to resist with her best efforts. The god body of a third sky King God Realm warrior wasn't ordinary. Shiyan's body couldn't resist as she dug a lot of bleeding holes on his back. Feels so good, Shiyan shouted. He didn't stop his movement. Shiyan was cruel enough to pound his steel-like fists on Feng Rao's tummy. Feng Rao screamed wildly. These two were biting and tearing each other apart while maintaining their sensual position like the two enraged beasts. The rock they were laying on couldn't stand anymore, breaking into pieces. They fell to the ground, but still engaged in their battle. Energies impacted. Flesh pounded on flesh. This scene was both sensual and bloody at the same time. Although Shiyan was stabbed and bleeding, he had never experienced such pleasure before. His shaft felt so good thrusting in and out of a moist and narrow place. Even though he was invading the woman under his body brutally, he also hit her without showing any mercy. His punches fell like a shower on Feng Rao's stomach, making her cry loudly and squeeze off his flesh further. Shiyan's god body had more deep-to-the-bone wounds. In the cold and dark outer space, on a massive meteorite, these two were like two mad mating animals rolling around. Wherever they passed by, rocks exploded. Everything was crushed. Feng Rao had been hurt badly. The sensitive area between her legs fell under the savage attack, her stomach hit multiple times. Gradually, she couldn't stand it anymore. Her grip on Shiyan's body loosened. Feng Rao's beautiful eyes reflected her sorrowful grief, looking at the man who was taking her body with deep hatred. She blushed unnaturally, panting. She hated that she couldn't kill herself at this place. This is the harassment she had thought would never happen to her. Countless thugs and space pirates in the land of God punishment didn't dare look at her in the eyes. And today, on this cold, barren meteorite, she was pushed on the ground and fell into the nightmare she had never wanted to see. Eventually, Feng Rao felt so weak that she couldn't perform a counterattack. Tears rolled from the corners of her eyes. She closed her eyes desperately as if she knew she would never escape this fatal end. Shiyan's eyes were still cold and harsh. Seeing her crying, he stopped thrusting, snorted, and studied her face. However, he didn't dare relax. The essence chi of Ganji and Pangjia, the two experts at the third sky of King God Realm, had been filtered and refined at this moment. The negative feelings were released, making him brutally thrust into her body without mercy or hesitation. His acupuncture points were refining the energy massively. The mysterious black hole that had swallowed Ganji's soul altar was spinning slowly. The energy that could nurture the soul altar oozed out from that section, blending into his sea of consciousness, his powers Upanishad tier, heaven flames tier, and his god's soul tier. That strange energy seemed to be able to wash the soul altar. The heaven flames were bouncing excitedly as if they had just gotten something marvelous. The seal of Upanishads in his god's soul became transparent, which made his understanding of space, star, and death and life become more profound. At the same time, the mysterious energy gushing out from his acupuncture point started to heal the wounds on his body under the control of his immortal martial spirit. A part of it shifted to fill the essence chi ancient tree. The harvest of this battle was beyond his imagination as his realm and cultivation base were both enhanced. The power that could swallow the soul altar was the most frightening mystery. Although he didn't understand the reason, he knew it was the most malignant power of this world. It was beyond anybody's imagination. He had a premonition that the power of swallowing soul altars was the biggest secret of the blood vein ring. Nurturing the soul altar to purify the seal of Upanishads wasn't something the experts like Du Tianji could believe. Shi Yan suddenly realized the wonderful powers added to his body. If he couldn't become the sole overlord of a region in the Raging Flame Star area, he would definitely fail the grace the blood vein ring had given him and feel guilty to the owner of the ring. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.